ball.
Good morning and welcome to OTB AM. Yes, it is me, and no, it's not Friday. Do not adjust your screens. This is Thursday's OTB AM. I'm here. Shane's over there. How are you?
Morning, Adrian. How are things?
How are you getting on?
A lot of people got excited, I think, when they saw you. They thought it was weekend impending, but not to be. Nearly there.
People around the office got very concerned that their week was nearly over / excited. How are you keeping?
Keeping well. Yeah, can't complain.
Big announcement yesterday.
Tell you what.
A good reaction to it.
Decent
I say
reaction.
that with a slight surprise. My voice is not really.
Yeah, you sound very surprised.
Not what I intended.
Yeah. Yeah, good reaction. Obviously, people wanted to see what the post-Owen OTB was going to look like, and
yeah, and
this
is it.
Sorry to let you all down, but this is it.
I liked a lot of the comments that were coming in off the back here, confirming that you're going to be a regular on OTB AM Monday to Friday, as has been pointed out. Great stuff, Shane, says Michael Buckley. Come across as knowledgeable, and your own quirky bits too. Comes across as knowledgeable. I mean, that's just all you have to do, really. You don't actually
just
have
come
to
across
be knowledgeable.
Yeah, so you can fake it till you make it. You don't have to be in any way smart or knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Just say big words every now and again. You know, intermittently say big words.
And where do we go from here?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Look, there's been a clamour, to be honest with you, over the last 24 hours since that announcement was made in the show yesterday, and then your PR department obviously kicked into gear in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And the announcement was made, and there's been a clamour. The audience have sort of wanted to know exactly who you are. We're going to come to that in a few moments' time.
Right. I know nothing about this.
Who is Shane Hannon? So we'll come back to that in a few minutes. There's some good questions, and if I think throughout the show this morning, if you out there have got questions for the new guy, feel free to fire them into us, and we'll do that over the course of the morning. Couple of other bits to get to before all of that. Some big news on the coaching / managerial merry-go-rounds from different sports overnight. One not great. Stewart Lancaster being heavily linked now with Racing. It's Jerry Thornley reporting it in the Irish Times this morning. I think most Leinster supporters this morning will be hoping that that's some sort of a kite flying exercise from Stewart Lancaster's people to secure him a longer term deal with Leinster. I've never suspected that that's really been his remit, so I have my doubts about it. Nothing is yet on paper. He is going to meet with Jackie Lorenzetti, the owner of Racing, via video over the weekend, and Lauren Travers as well, the current head coach. They're going to have that meeting over the weekend. Nothing confirmed just yet. It's expected that at that meeting it will all be confirmed, and that he will be joining them at the start of or at the end of this season. Which, just in the overall trajectory of what he's done for Leinster, when he arrived, this is his 7th season. When he arrived, Leinster needed him, he needed Leinster. Leinster had been falling away from the expected levels they'd reached over the previous years. He was still rebuilding his career after the England's 2015 World Cup, and they needed each other. It was a very symbiotic thing that worked. His stock has soared unbelievably. Himself and Ronan O'Gara are two of the highest rated coaches in world rugby at the minute, so I can understand why clubs have come calling for him, but I mean that would just be a monster loss for Leinster if it does get confirmed. Yeah,
and even we know from leaders' questions and off the ball that he is a smart man as well as a great coach. The players obviously took to him at Leinster as well, especially now if it's announced at the very outset of the season, like we saw with the Van Gran announcement with Munster last year. It can not derail things, but knowing that a coach is leaving at the end of the season, sometimes you're better off doing it cutthroat, getting it done with, and announce it, and then it's done straight away. But yeah, if this lingers on, and it seems to be fairly legit. I know he's been fairly long courted by Racing, and seems to be a match probably made in heaven as well. I know Travers will probably go to that director of rugby role, which a lot of teams are doing these days, but Lancaster strikes me as someone, obviously lives in England, he's spent his time now in Dublin as well, but probably wants to taste a bit of different cultures, different countries. This is a perfect opportunity to do it. You'd be concerned the fact that they've already lost Philippe Auclair and Dennis Alimi, who were fairly big and mammoth losses, not to overstate it, and then when you look at Leo Cullen being out of contract next summer as well, kind of adds to the concern. I mean, from the Leinster coaching perspective, now nothing is set in stone, because if Lancaster leaves, then the focus comes on Cullen, and will he stay as well? Look, every chance he does, but he's a titan loss, Stewart Lancaster, and you can't blame him either. He's been there since 2016. He's done a good stint with Leinster, so more power to him. But obviously, from a Leinster perspective, it's terrible news.
He said, like, obviously he had a monster knock on Leinster's culture and Irish rugby's culture as well. Like you mentioned, Leamy, obviously he will be bringing some of that to Munster, no doubt. And I'm sure that, like, all the players that have been involved at Leinster over the last number of years who've then been involved at Ireland will have brought that culture there as well. Like, I mean, I think that it can't be overestimated the impact that he would have had even outside directly of his role. So I do think that there's obviously a huge benefit of having had somebody like that there for 7 years and the impact that they have, but obviously certainly losing him is a big blow. There has to be a knock on, I would think, on the entire Irish rugby scene. He'd been involved in conversations for years about, like, the last few years, like, you know, would he take up a role with Ireland at some point? Is there like is there a different role for him within the IRFU where he can sort of spread that culture a bit wider? Like, I mean, I don't know. That's the only reason I'm saying maybe the kite flying thing. Are the IRFU reading that this morning and going, hang on?
Yeah, we'll sort out a new contract.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Let's sit down. We need to figure this thing out, because, you know, certainly listened to him over the last few years, and as you say, he presented a show for us here at Leaders' Questions with Stewart Lancaster for a couple of years, and, like, we would have obviously got to know him a little bit, and he seemed very settled. You know, family life, and obviously maybe the family have got a little bit older, and maybe that opens up opportunities for it in itself. But I do think, like, to quote a great man, where do we go from here is definitely an interesting one. And you talked about, like, you know, the people that are out of contract and where ultimately the club do go from here. I think that one of the other things, obviously, is Johnny Sexton is nearing the finish line, and you know, when you talk about people that are driving the culture and voices within that dressing room, I think that, like, that obviously has to be brought into account as well. And Leo Cullen suggested surprisingly the other week that maybe it isn't the end of Johnny Sexton as a player, which I thought was kind of interesting enough. Is there some... He himself is on the record as saying that he wants out. You know, when he's done, I don't want to get involved in coaching, I'm going to go and do something else, I want to get away from rugby. I mean, this suddenly creates an opportunity that might be right at the end of his career, that for somebody who, you know, the intellect, the experience, the, you know, cultures that he's been involved in at those dressing rooms over the last while, it wouldn't have been how they planned it, but now that the opportunity comes up, coach Johnny Sexton, you know, listen, come in, give us 3 years while you're, you know, all that intellect of rugby now is in your brain. Yeah,
and I feel it's easy. It's easy for players to say while they're still playing that when they retire, I don't want to be involved in rugby anymore, I want to just leave the game. But then when you actually leave the game, there can be the little bit of graw that returns and you can miss it a little bit. So, you know, from Johnny's perspective, he says he doesn't want to be involved in the game. That remains to be seen after he hangs up the boots for real. But like, Johnny could step in there, no bother. But I mean, Lancaster obviously has the experience. He's been there, done that. Like, does Johnny have to cut his teeth somewhere else in the coaching world before he comes back to Leinster? I don't know. Like, he'd be a coach you'd listen to.
I think you could create a role from there that leans on the lack of experience that he would have as a coach. But also, anybody you ever listen to who's been in a dressing room will tell you, he may choose to never want to do anything about coaching, but it does seem from anybody who's played with him that they would say that's there. Now, it hasn't worked out for others. No, true. You know, like, we always go back to the Roy Keane example, but a great player doesn't always make a great coach.
No, I'd like to see Johnny first write the book when he retires. I'd like to read the book. And
has he not written one already? I think he might have written one, but maybe you're slightly compromised when you're still playing.
You definitely are, and you know, the post-retirement book is always the one. He can talk about the Rog rivalry and all the different facets of his career over the years. Obviously, Johnny's career is building up now to the Rugby World Cup next year. You'd imagine thereafter, the time of retirement will be upon him. Very interesting to listen to Andy Dunn last night on Wednesday Night Rugby talking about Kieran Frawley and the emerging talent trip to South Africa, and how his conspiracy theory was that it could be almost a test run for Frawley to see how he deals with the 3 tests leading the team, because obviously there is the issue of Johnny's backup for the World Cup if he did get injured. You know, he needs to have that backup available. So yeah, some interesting stuff in the rugby last night. But yeah, Johnny Sexton, the coach, like, I can see it.
Johnny Sexton becoming a lion is the name of the book. Riveting is the quote on the front of it.
Of course, yeah.
Which is always a good setup. So yeah, look, we will see how all that plays out. And I mean, if Gerry Thornley in the Irish Times is correct this morning, it's been reported and picked up in some of the other papers then as well. Then that
it feels like more than rumours, doesn't it? Yeah.
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs. For an effortless finish to your day, here's what's coming up between now and 10 this morning. We'll have Jonathan Wilson, football writer, on in the next 15 minutes or so, and we're going to talk all things rugby. rugby. There's so much to get our teeth into it with Jonathan around that. And if you've any questions in relation to it, do fire them into us. Philippe Auclair, some interesting developments in the world of French rugby and the French Football Federation specifically over the last few days too. We'll talk to him about that. Aisling O'Reilly's in Dromoland for the KPMG Women's Irish Open this week, and we're going to get Aisling's preview for you a little bit later in the show. We'll have the sports pages with JD at 20 to 9, and you had to be there. Michael Verney is in the hot seat this week, and what a list that he's got of 5 events that he's been at over the last number of years. Some surprising and some not that surprising, and very surprising that there's one sport particularly that doesn't get included. Yeah,
and also big news from your own county last night, the ratification. Adrian is in from Westmeath.
Big developments. All the big counties now have their managerial positions filled. Shane, I think is how we can look upon this one.
There's actually 3. Is it 3 Division 1 teams?
Donegal, of course.
Donegal, Roscommon as well have
Rossies,
yet to,
yeah.
So,
I think it was more straightforward from Westmeath's point of view. I don't think they were actually going to really go in any other direction, to be honest. Like, I think that the continuity, we were chatting obviously to Jack Cooney a few weeks ago, and he was talking about that continuity bit. We were trying to get him to endorse, and he basically did endorse, didn't he? It was like
Desi and John. We saying John Keane or John Kane?
John Keane, I think.
I know the locals in Westmeath have different hybrid pronunciations, but we'll let them out.
The locals do, just not me. Is that?
Yeah, well, yeah.
So Desi Dolan has been confirmed. She's just waking up to it this morning as the new Westmeath manager. He doesn't come with a huge amount of experience of that role specifically. He obviously has had the year under Jack Cooney. He has previously been a player selector under his own brother with Gerry Castle when they went on to win the Westmeath Senior Football Championship a couple of years ago, and interestingly with John Keane as coach of the team as well. And it does seem like that's the vibe here. Desi manager, like almost in that Clive Woodward role of being chief operations director or whatever. And then you have John Keane sort of doing the coaching, but it does seem as if there's going to be others who've just been in the backroom
Cooney
team now,
who
will come over, but there's no more sort of confirmations of that just yet. And I think there will be excitement in the county about it. Like, he is obviously, himself and John Keane are 2 of the greatest players we've ever had. There's maybe a couple of other names you'd stick on the list, but there's not many. 2 absolute legends of the county. It doesn't necessarily, given the conversation, would just make you an amazing coach, but I do think that there will be excitement about it. The continuity, I think, is really important. I think that obviously they'd struck upon something last year that worked for them, and they got a bit of rub of the green, and they got the run in the Charlton Cup, and all that helped. We just don't know yet what type of manager Desi Dolan is, and that's probably the biggest question mark about it. I
think players like continuity, and obviously Desi brings that. The only concern I'd have, and probably anyone would have, is that lack of experience. Like, he's only had 1 year as a selector, and the fact that they're in the Sam Maguire now next year adds a bit of pressure as well. Obviously the Leinster Championship, you go as far as you can, and the Championship this year will be interesting to see how Desi gets on. But good to see Westmeath acting so fast. 3.5 weeks is pretty quick. Obviously when it's done in-house. Interested, even when we were speaking to Jack Cooney, the fact that he was the first within Westmeath manager since 1990, and now all of a sudden you have one straight away afterwards.
A run of 11 managers of a non-native.
But then if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So it obviously worked. It worked under Cooney.
If it's in that instance, okay, I'm with you. I'm just more reflecting on not all of the previous 30 years,
of course,
for sure.
But I'd be it appears now to get a job in intercounty management, you just need to get into the media first, get your name out there. Kevin McStay did it. Colin O'Rourke did it. I know Desi had left RTE slightly before he confirmed this appointment, but it appears to be put your face on the wall and you get a job. It does your profile no harm doing a bit of media work, and obviously county boards then see people who are more recognisable coming forward for interviews. Even interested to read. We mentioned Oisin McConville's comments yesterday in his podcast talking about he felt Ray Dempsey was the better choice for the Mayo job ahead of Kevin McStay. But then when Kevin McStay has the media profile and the backroom team with him as well, it's hard to go against that. So it's kind of similar with Desi. He has the profile, he was the continuity there as well, so it can only help.
He'd been long trying to get the Mayo job, obviously, McStay, and it kind of felt as if time was coming. And interestingly, Desi's dad had been a long time trying to get the Westmeath job without ever getting it. He'd managed Leitrim, and he would have managed Garry Castle and clubs under his belt as well, and never got it. Like, there was times where it seemed like the obvious opportunity, and that's an interesting wrinkle in this entire story as well. The pundit one is interesting because, like, it feels like at the rate they're hoovering up RTE pundits out there, Marty Morrissey is like odds on to get the Roscommon job. It's like
come to Monaghan if you want, Marty.
Hang around long enough.
We're struggling a bit for people up there. But it raises an interesting question: the fact that Westmeath can get it done so quickly, but then you see counties like Monaghan, Donegal, and Roscommon struggling, and they're big jobs. They're lucrative jobs in terms of profile, Division 1 teams, all with a chance, you would argue, of winning their province as well next season. So it kind of just goes to show how time consuming and just all encompassing the intercounty job is now. And Desi's obviously taken a couple of weeks now to think about it, and
I'd say it took him about 4 seconds
probably, but then you have to debate
the CV in there.
It's nice being in the back room where you can kind of like Stephen Rochford has learned from it. He obviously had the pressure of the Mayo job, went into the Donegal back room, now at the Mayo back room. He probably likes that lack of being the main man, the main focus. So now Desi probably had to, that's probably the only thing he had to consider was, do I want the serious attention of being the number one man? And clearly he does. I predict
Desi is going to win Leinster and could well win. Desi could well win the All Ireland next year.
Desi Dolan.
leave that.
You're going to have to clarify surnames
to yourself. Couple of comments in. Mark Dunning, did I sleep through Thursday, or is Adrian doing 2 days this week?
Double bubble.
Pretty much the latter, it's obvious, as another YouTube commenter, Rog to Leinster, match made in heaven. I mean, I like where you're coming from. I just don't ever really see that happening. I presume, obviously, there was a big deal made yesterday about they went all in, I presume, with you. Did they?
Oh, jeez. Right.
I presume they didn't miss it yesterday.
Did fully missed it, as you well know, Adrian. That's why obviously.
Come on out of that. Jesus, I mean,
I went the whole
colleagues. You would have thought
some of the lads in the office take their birthday off, so this doesn't happen. I managed to avoid.
Really?
Well, I've heard a couple. I won't name
I'd
names.
Like to know names.
I avoided the entire day bringing up the birthday yesterday, and I came back into the office after getting the hair chopped, and came in, and Phil Egan says to me, "Geez, you kept that quiet." I don't know how he found out, but at the end of the day, he found out anyway. And
good man. What age are you?
29 now.
29.
Last year, the 20s.
Yeah, good man.
So, any advice?
Any advice? Well, my 29, unfortunately, was so long ago, Shane. I can't even remember it.
Yeah.
No, keep on doing what you're doing. That's
just keep at it. Yeah. 29 is an exciting age, I think.
Really?
No, I'm just trying to make myself feel better, to be honest.
What are you thinking about that? What's the excitement?
Prime your life.
Right?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah. No, definitely not. Definitely not. Doesn't feel like
your sporting career is sort of surely like this is a signifier that it's, you know.
Yeah.
You're into the at least the autumn. I mean, if not the winter.
It's funny because I used to play, or I still play soccer for Monaghan Town FC, my local team at home, and started playing for them when I was 17. I kind of did 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Moved
up to Dublin and left it for a while. Moved back last year to the team, and I'm playing again this year. Captaining them this year, and I'm one of the older lads in the team now, which is
right.
I was training last night looking around, and you're seeing lads who are 17, 18, and you're thinking, Jesus, this is a wake up call, because you still feel relatively young.
You pick your what did you say?
I actually feel 32 or 3. I think I'm yet to reach the peak.
Right.
Adrian, physical.
Wow.
I'm talking physical peak here in terms of 5k times and triathlon efforts and that sort of thing.
Well, there was a time a few years ago where we used to look at, here's the young buck, like a gazelle sort of out leading the way around the triathlons, but we might have to revisit that now, given that you're pushing on a bit. The other thing that happened over the last 24 hours was obviously after your PR push, after you engaged the PR community yesterday to get your get the message out there that you were joining OTB AM on a full-time basis. There was a clamour from the audience to get to know just who is Shane Hannon.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you like me.
Getting to know you. I don't like, I'm a man who I don't really get nervous. Nervous wouldn't be a major thing, but it's usually because you like to be prepared, have your research done, whether it's life itself or work. I don't really know what's about to happen.
Well, we've 10 questions with Shane Hannon. The audience have demanded it, and
one person maybe demanded it. It's probably you as well.
Pretty much me. And we got to figure out exactly who you are, because we fast track some of this process that people are going to spend the next 6-12 months watching you, getting to know about what you're about and beyond. But we kind of want to fast track a lot of that and just give people a bit of a look behind the curtain.
I've only been working off the ball for 5 years.
I know, yeah. But have you ever done this before?
Nope, never done this. Certainly not on air.
10 questions with Shane Hannon. What is your main sport to follow? When you're out and about and somebody says, "Oh yeah, so what's your main sport?"
Oh, you see, I can't say 3. Obviously, I can't say 3 sports. Can I?
No. What's your main one sport to follow?
Oh Jesus! Right. Well, soccer, Gaelic football, and snooker are the short list. I'll probably go with soccer.
Right.
Yeah. Is this quick fire, or do you want me to elaborate?
Oh no, elaborate on.
Yeah.
We've 2.5 hours for this, lad. So away you go.
Probably my most enjoyable sport to play. I like playing it. Football man. Yeah. Not quite to the ilk of Nathan Murphy.
Well, we'll let the audience decide that. Yeah,
they can decide that. But I would say soccer was my first love. Used to get the old fella to buy the Irish Daily Star on Tuesday. No, every weekday, in fact, and I go down to his room and read the soccer section of the newspaper to myself. A la Jimmy McGee. So that was the.
Is that what he used to do?
He used to apparently run around the fields in Cooley commentating to himself,
right?
Like pretending cows and sheep were players. So that's the Jimmy McGee reference.
Went that far. What's the best sporting event that you've ever been to?
Oh Jesus! See, this is why I should have had these questions in advance. I could at least think of it.
Just spoil the fun.
The Crucible World Snooker Championship.
That's pretty good, yeah.
One of the semi-finals in, I can't remember who was playing. It was in 2017 and 18. I think I was over. But I mean, just the Crucible is the greatest cauldron in sport. The amphitheatre, I think it's only maybe 1,000 capacity, but it's just so intimate. And like I know people say and say on TV, you could hear a pin drop. You literally, there is no quieter place to be than the Crucible when a shot is about to be played, and especially when you're in the front row of those press seats, you really try not to move whatsoever. But just the atmosphere. I've never seen Ronnie O'Sullivan unfortunately play on the biz at the Crucible. I've seen him play a couple of exhibitions and that sort of thing, and obviously sat down with him a few times. But a world championship semi-final,
where you don't know who played. So we're getting a good sense.
Mark Williams was the year Williams won. Yeah.
Fontaines DC or Big Tom?
I know Conor Curley, the guitarist for Fontaines DC, reasonably well.
Say for the mainliners there, but yeah, go ahead, yeah.
And he's a fellow club man with myself, man on harps. He was a great hurler back in the day as well. Year behind me in school. Big Tom is obviously a legend. Was a legend. We have a drum set in our garage that Big Tom's band used to use. Our babysitter had it. He was part of the band years ago. The mainliners. So I'm gonna opt for Fontaines DC.
Oof.
Show my youth.
Go to takeaway.
Jesus, chipper all day long. And
what are you having?
Like, it's a chicken fillet burger, lettuce and mayo, and the chip. Right, the important thing about the bag of chips is it has to be doused in vinegar. I mean, like the bag has to be dripping all over your leg as you walk out of the shop. The Monte Carlo in Monaghan is it's won a few awards. It's the place to be for chips. I brought Kevin Gaban to the Monte Carlo.
Oh yeah,
he was up for pints in Monaghan.
He gave it his seal of approval.
Yeah.
You're a tattoo kind of guy.
Yeah.
What's your favourite and what's next?
Favourite tattoo? Got 10 tattoos. Believe it or not, I got my most recent one last week. Which is the plough, the constellation, the Big Dipper, the plough.
Right.
Has a couple of meanings. So it's obviously big space geek, as you well know. But also it's James Connolly would be one of my heroes. Both of his parents were from County Monaghan. Was reading books about him recently, and that plough symbol representing, I guess it was on one of the flags hung above Dublin during the Easter Rising. I think there was 3 flags held above. One was the tricolour, one just Red Irish Republic, and one was the plough. So it has a couple of meanings. Right. But I'd say the favourite one would be the last man to walk on the moon, Captain Gene Cernan, who I interviewed in 2013. I said to myself, when he dies, I'm going to get his handwriting tattooed. So after I interviewed him, he sent me a photograph of him on the moon and said, "To Shane, it's our destiny to explore." So I got that tattooed here.
Class.
In his handwriting. So you've been in the pool with me as we train.
I didn't explore. So
you've seen it. You've seen a few of them, but that'll be the number one.
Let's fly through the rest of these. Mark Hughes or Nudie Hughes?
Nudie Hughes.
Mastermind specialist topic?
The Apollo moon landings. 1969 to 1972.
Wow. Well, we will put that to the test and on. Read, listen, or watch?
Read.
Favourite score of any sport at any time?
Favourite score?
Yeah.
Just scoreline?
No, score like as in goal or point or...
Oh, favourite score. That would probably be between two. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, 2-1 Bayern Munich. Slid on my knees with my dad. Probably the moment I fell in love with football. Dad started crying, I think, if my memory serves me correctly. Right. And Dad had said just beforehand, don't worry, Shane, United always score. This is just before the Sheringham goal. And sure enough, Clive Tilsley said the same thing. The other one is Conor McManus from the sideline, Healy Park, Omagh, in the Ulster Championship a number of years ago, 2018 was it? Where it was just the greatest score in Gaelic football I've ever seen in person. I was behind the goal at a perfect angle, and his reaction, the fist pump afterwards, that's my two favourite scores, I'd say. And
finally, you've mentioned you're a space geek there. Fly to the moon or Monaghan to win an All-Ireland 3 in a row?
Oh, jeez.
3 in a row.
3 in a row?
Yeah.
Do you know what? We're floating around on a ball of rock through space at the minute, Adrian, faster than the speed of a bullet.
So Monaghan 3 in a row, so you're saying.
No, I think space is bigger than all of us. You know, the big questions, the philosophical questions, is there life out there? Yeah. Are we alone in the universe?
Yeah.
So I think to walk on the moon, or even fly around the moon, and to come back with that big overview effect and be a changed person.
Yeah. But what about Monaghan winning 3 in a row? Like, I mean, so you're choosing the selfish thing. No, I get that. That's a good insight, a good window into who Shane Hanlon is.
We've waited this long. We can wait till after I'm long dead and gone for our first All-Ireland if we want. So yeah, fly to the moon for me.
We have more questions coming in, and we'll come back to those and on. But that was enjoyable, Shane. Good man. I think we got to know you a little bit more.
Slightly
Not
more,
all of it that great, I won't lie, but it's warts and all. That's what we're at.
Baby
we're
steps,
about here.
baby steps.
It's 5 to 8. You're watching OTB AM, and we have loads to come on the show today. And we'll come to all of that and on. But right now, we're going to turn our attention to football. I'm glad to say that the football writer Jonathan Wilson is on the line. Morning, Jonathan.
Morning, how you doing?
Very good. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. One, obviously, to talk about England. A couple of games upcoming. An interesting time to talk English football, and obviously ahead of the World Cup. Talk to us first of all, maybe just about obviously the rocky patch that's come for England in the recent Nations League matches. Gareth Southgate has had the appropriately labelled dreaded vote of confidence from the FA in the meantime as well. And 2 really tough games to come now. Effectively, I mean, I guess they're final competitive warm-up games for the World Cup. What's the mood music around Gareth Southgate at the minute?
I don't think he's under pressure as such, in that I have absolutely no doubt that he will be England's coach at the World Cup. But there's definitely a negativity there which hasn't been there in the 6 years he's had the job. And personally, I find that really, really weird. I don't think he's perfect by any means. I think there's certain things you can criticise him for. But fundamentally, he's taken England to 2 of the 5 semi-finals they've ever reached. He's only lost 3 out of 41 games in either the World Cup or the European Championship. England have only ever won 14 knockout games in major tournaments. He's responsible for 5 of them. So his level of achievement stands up against any previous manager. But those Nations League games in the summer were hugely disappointing. And to lose 4-0 at home against anybody when you're England is a humiliation. To do it against Hungary is particularly so. I think there's all kinds of reasons for those results. I think everybody was exhausted in June. I think nobody particularly wanted to play those games. The Nations League, personally, I think has been a very, very good thing. Maybe this edition of it, because of COVID, because of the compacted nature of the season, because of the World Cup coming in the winter, which has compressed the calendar even further, they feel a bit more of an imposition than the first 2 editions did. So, there's an unease about Southgate, which hasn't been there. I don't think it's anything like what we've seen for previous England managers. And I think the moment it might lead him to leaving the job is December, not now.
Obviously, Jonathan, the fact that England will lose or will be relegated from their Nations League group if they lose tomorrow night adds to the pressure. But do you think we'd be even talking about Southgate being under pressure if this wasn't England and this wasn't the English media speaking to him in press conferences?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know what people expect. I think what he's done has been extraordinary. I think he's been by far the best England manager of my lifetime. But that arrogance, which is always there in English football, which which I think probably had to an extent been dampened down after the pretty horrendous performances in the World Cup in 2014 and in the Euro 2016. I think that's back. I found that even the attitude around the Euros is very, very strange. That England got through the group comfortably enough, and there was a lot of, this is really boring. They're playing negative football. You still think it's a group. Just get through it. That's all it's there for. And this sort of idea, it's a really easy group. I mean, they literally started against Croatia, the team who'd beaten them in the World Cup semi-final. That's clearly not an easy game, but England won it. So, but rather than giving them credit for that, there was a sort of, of course they should beat Croatia. And then, even against Germany, it's a weak Germany. England just beaten Germany in a major championship in a knockout game. That hasn't happened since 1966 to beat Germany in a knockout game. And then they beat Ukraine 4-0. I mean, what else do people want? I've sort of found the whole nature of the discussion, but both depressing in sort of there's just sort of this sense of we're bored of this, we need a change, but also just totally unrealistic that no team, doesn't matter how talented you are, how many great players you have, goes out in a major tournament and wins every game 4-5, 6-0. And it's not as if England have got a history of doing that in the entire history of football. So, personally, I think England should have, and Southgate should have been widely praised for getting to the final of the Euros rather than this sort of sense of underlying resentment. And it's not even like they lost the final. I think there's things went wrong in the final, but they drew it and lost on penalties, which, in a previous age, that might have been seen as a great achievement.
There was that 4-game slog in June as well, and I guess the way it ended in Molineux with that 4-0 defeat by Hungary wasn't great. Is Southgate nearly a victim of the nature of international windows here? Like that was June, this is September. It's been 3 months. It's not like the club game where you can address, perform pretty quickly. The fact is, when you have a couple of bad games in a row at international level, that just hangs over until the next window.
Yeah, well, I think there's two slightly separate aspects there with the calendar. So the first is those games in June, nobody wanted to be there. But journalists didn't want to be there. I confess I barely paid those games any attention. I watched them, but I wasn't sort of reading reams about them because everybody was knackered after a very, very intense period of football, with the season before that season having been sort of lumped into the beginning of it. Everybody was knackered. The players were clearly knackered. I think to read anything into those games I think you've got to put them in the context that they came in. So Southgate pays for that the players really were exhausted, didn't want to be there. But then we got this sort of added problem of the World Cup being in November. So in a sense, those games came at the worst possible time because there are only these 2 matches coming up to get over that and go into the World Cup. And England could play really well against Italy and Germany and lose both games. And so suddenly they're going into the World Cup having failed to win their 6 previous games. And I think the nature of this World Cup, I don't know if people have sort of really realised how ludicrous it is that, I look back at the 5 previous World Cups this century, and the gap between the Champions League final and the start of the World Cup, I think the average is 20 days. And that's for Champions League finals. The domestic season would have finished a week or 10 days before that. So a lot of players effectively will have had a month between the end of their season and the start of the World Cup. This time, we got 7 days between the last Premier League fixtures and the start of the World Cup. So if you're, I think Ecuador are the team who are going to be worst affected. So Moises Caicedo will probably play for Brighton on that Sunday, and Estupiñán also for Brighton. And then a week later, they're going to be playing against Qatar in the first game of the World Cup. Well, a week is no time at all. So there's absolutely no preparation time. And I think you can see a parallel with what happened to the Cup of Nations this year, where because of various COVID regulations, a lot of teams only got together 5, 6, 7 days before the Cup of Nations began. And that first round of group games at the Cup of Nations were incredibly boring, incredibly negative, incredibly cautious, because nobody was properly prepared, and every single coach was just like, don't lose the first game before we've got ourselves set up. So those first 8 matches, there was an average of 1.12 goals. the next, every game after that, there's an average of 2.08 goals per game. So it almost doubled. And I think we'll probably see something pretty similar at the World Cup. That first round of games, nobody will quite be ready. And so the level of football and the level of ambition in those first games will be pretty limited.
One of the other areas of pressure, obviously, coming on Gareth Southgate is that some of his more experienced players, that you would think that in the context of everything you've just said, given timelines, that you would probably look to try and lean on a little bit more, have been out of form or, not playing many games for the club, and in some cases, both of those things. How does that impact when you start to look at his starting 11 for the next couple of games and into the World Cup? Does he try to rely on some of the experience that haven't been playing, or is this a bit of a blank canvas and we're going to see some freshening up of that team?
Oh, I think it's going to be a mix of the two. I mean, clearly Jordan Pickford's injured, so he won't play. So there's going to be effectively a run-off for the second and third goalkeeping places. Nick Pope, I think, is probably pretty much nailed on for second place, but whether it's Henderson or Ramsdale for the third place, I think that'll be decided. Eric Dyer, who's been out of the picture for 18 months, has been in great form this season. I think for me, he becomes the first choice of a central of the three centre-backs. So he presumably will start both games to get him back in. You then think, well, there's a bit of an issue on the left side of the three centre-backs. And I think both these games, we probably will see a back three for the bulk of them, because I think Southgate's policy is he plays that back three with the two holding players in games where he doesn't expect England to dominate the ball comfortably. When England can be relied upon to dominate the ball, so for instance, that first game of the World Cup against Iran, you would expect England to have 60-65% possession. I think that'll be a 4-3-3. But obviously against Germany and Italy, they're going to be those games where England have to defend a bit more. So I think it will, at least from the start, probably be a back three in these two games. So the left-sided defender, ideally, I think would be Harry Maguire. But Maguire's been out of form for a year, 18 months. And so then you think, well, do you play Maguire to get him some minutes because he's not playing for Manchester United, to try and get him back into the swing of things? I think he and Dyer we've seen work well together before. The Dyer, I think, is very good at organising, and Maguire probably is a player who needs to be directed. Or do you look at the possible replacements, Mark Gahey, Fikayo Tomori, both of whom are quite inexperienced, and that I think is a really difficult decision as to whether you try and give experience and test out the players who could come in, or whether you try and play your senior player back into form. And I think that kind of question is popping up all over the place. So the forward line, I think, is pretty much, it will be Kane and Sterling and one other. I think that's not really a problem. But there's issues right across the defence. The wing-backs, Kyle Walker hasn't started the season particularly well. Ben Chilwell's barely been playing. So do you play Trippier on the right, or do you play him on the left? Do you play Reece James as a right-sided centre-back, or do you play Stones and play Reece James as the right wing-back? Then at the back of midfield, Declan Rice hasn't had a great start of the season. I think he's nailed on to start. Ideally, you probably want a Calvin Phillips alongside him, because Calvin Phillips has the best range of passing of players in that position. I think his capacity to get the ball forward quickly is something that no other England player gives you from that position. But he's injured. So then Jordan Henderson, who's been injured for Liverpool, was a late call to the squad as he recovered quicker than expected from injury. Do you put him in, or do you say, actually, we're going to go with something totally new and bring in Jude Bellingham, who I think has probably been the best England midfielder on form so far this season, but isn't really that profile of holding player, and probably would prefer the 4-3-3 that England may use against Iran, but probably won't use in these two warm-up games, or these two Nations League games.
Harry Maguire's a fascinating case study, Jonathan. I mean, as you say, his form's been brutal, but obviously he hasn't been playing to be brutal in recent weeks. Southgate has been a man who's always spoke about the importance of club form when you come into an international duty, and yet, as you say, Maguire's one of the most senior players in that squad. He gets on very well, with Stones, with Dyer in the back. It would be very strange, though, for a player not playing whatsoever at club level to be starting World Cup games for a team like England.
It would be, but I guess sometimes needs must. And I think the thing you can say in defence of Harry Maguire is, apart from that Denmark game when he was sent off and was dreadful in the half hour before he was sent off, he's been pretty good for England all the way through. And I think he's a better player on the left of the back three than he is in the back four. I think he remains very dominant in the air. So if he has Eric Dyer directing him, Sorry, that sounds patronising. I don't mean it to be patronising, but somebody else taking on that burden of organisation, I think suits him. I think also you've got to think of the attacking threat he brings. So he's been a regular goal scorer under Southgate because he is so good in the air, and set plays have been an England strength under Southgate. So I think Southgate would probably be loath to lose that. I also think Maguire's just one of those players who other players like. And when you're cooped up, 26 of you in a hotel for a month, that is not an insignificant aspect. So, I mean, Maguire, I think, has to be assuming he's fit, has to be in the squad. If he's in the squad, you don't want him to be a dead weight. So therefore you need him playing. And so I think probably at least the Italy game, he will start. And as long as he's not disastrous, he probably will start that game against Iran in the World Cup. Having said that, if it's a back four, maybe he is a man to stand down. But the first game we play back three at the World Cup, I would expect him to be in.
You mentioned Jordan Henderson returning to the squad there from injury, and I know Calvin Phillips has been a man that's really excelled at international level under Southgate and has got a lot of game time. He's only played the minute for Man City since joining from Leeds this summer, obviously been curtailed by injuries. But is this an opportunity massively come knocking for Jordan Henderson to kind of maybe get that place back ahead of the World Cup?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think the fact that he is so... It would be very easy for him not to turn up for this squad, to say, look, I'm just getting over my injuries. But he's clearly desperate to get back in and wants to prove himself and prove his fitness and prove that partnership with Rice can function, can work. And I think Henderson is probably a better passer than people give him credit for. But I think he's also, and you see this with Liverpool, what a great leader he is, that he talks constantly. So though Harry Kane is the notional captain, I think Henderson is the sort of spiritual captain, if you like. He's the one who sort of keeps everyone on their toes, keeps the shape right. And England probably need that because the nature of international teams is you obviously don't train together as much as club sides, and therefore the pressing is not quite as instinctive as it would be at club level. And having somebody there organising it, and the fact Henderson does it at Liverpool, the team who went on song are the best pressing team probably in the world, that's a very useful asset to have. Calvin Phillips's quick forward passing is a very useful asset to have. But yeah, I think if Henderson plays one and a half of these two games and plays well, that probably gets him in for the World Cup, given that Phillips isn't playing Manchester City at the moment, even when he is fit.
Those forward options, I mean, you mentioned Kane and Sterling, Jonathan. Just looking at some of the backup options, and granted, Marcus Rashford isn't in this squad, he has a slight knock, but he's been in good form for United so far this season. Like looking at some of the other options, you've Ollie Watkins. I know Callum Wilson and Calvert-Lewin are both injured at the minute as well. Tammy Abraham is an option further down the pecking order. Beyond Kane and Sterling, who's your third nailed on attacking option for England at the minute?
Well, I think you got who's the backup for Kane. I think it's the first question there. And that seems to me a shootout between Tammy Abraham and Ivan Toney. I think it's significant Ivan Toney's been called up to this squad. I think it's right that he has been, because I think he's been excellent this season. So, yeah, I was trying to pick my 26. And I think it's possible that both Abraham and Toney could go, because you might think, well, there could be games where with 15, 20 minutes to go, England need a goal and you want to play with two strikers. And if one of them's injured, you need a third one. So I think it's possible Abraham and Toney both go, but really I think it is a shootout between them to be Kane's backup. You then have that sort of array of wide forwards or forwards that can come from deeper. And I think with Kane, the way he drops off, you need players who can go beyond him, which possibly counts against Phil Foden, brilliant footballer that he is. So Sterling clearly is at the forefront of that because he and Kane work so well together and he had such good Euros. And then I guess you're looking at somebody like Bukayo Saka, and Saka is incredibly useful because he can play both wing-back positions as well. So he offers you cover all over. I'm slightly puzzled by Southgate's attitude to Jadon Sancho, not necessarily now, but he clearly didn't particularly rate him in the summer. That when Sancho was in good form for Dortmund, he still wasn't the first choice for England. So there's something there that Southgate thinks he doesn't quite do that he needs. And then I guess you got Jack Grealish, who Southgate seems to like to use as an impact player off the bench, and I get that. I see the logic of that. The Grealish's his dribbling ability is very, very useful in terms of coming on against tired limbs, beating a man, getting across, possibly being fouled and getting a free kick or a penalty.
We asked you at the start, Jonathan, just about the general mood music around Gareth Southgate. As much as it is in any way possible to speak on behalf of an entire nation, to wrap it, what's your expectation, or what is the general expectation about how England can do at the World Cup?
That's a question that's where sort of realistic considerations almost don't exist. I sort of, the older I get, the more disappointed I get in the world, in all honesty. But there's one of the problems with international football. So no, that's not fair. One of the features of international football is a lot of people watch it who don't watch club football, and their expectations often seem totally unrealistic. So I think when the World Cup starts, there will be a lot of people think England should win the World Cup. They'll think, oh, well, the semi-finalists last time got to the finals, the logical progression is to go semi-final, final, win it. I think England can win the World Cup. They're possibly in the best position to do well at the World Cup in my lifetime. But what's happened this year with those performances in June, with the injuries, with all the questions we've got now, I think there's an equal possibility that England could have a desperately bad World Cup. I also, that the group is almost as bad as it could possibly be, in that it looks easy and it really isn't. That people will underestimate Iran, and they will underestimate the USA, and they will underestimate Wales. But all three of those are tricky games. And I think certainly when the draw was done, if you just averaged out the world ranking of each group, that group is I mean, it clearly isn't, but by world ranking, that group is the hardest group. So I worry that there will be a complacency about the group games that isn't justified, and that even saying they get through with 7 points, as they did in the Euros, there'll be a sense of anticlimax and, this isn't quite good enough, we should be battering these teams, which is totally unreasonable and unrealistic.
Yeah, most of us are always destined to end up disappointed, Jonathan, as you pointed out. Thanks a million, enjoyed that.
Cheers, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Jonathan Wilson, writer on all things English football. You're watching OTB AM. It's gone 17 minutes past 8 on this Thursday morning. Delighted to have you with us. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're going to be back after this with the French football writer Philippe Auclair on some big stories in French football. We'll talk to you after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Koi Gig Pod on OTB Sports.
I need to do that more. Every time I say something about an Irish player, they just go and they kick my ass the next time, and they're absolutely brilliant. So
I'm going to ask you to start slating me every Friday just so that I play a bit better on a Saturday.
Felt like a classic Arsenal win.
I think they should be winning the league realistically.
Keep up to date with all the WSL action every Tuesday and subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good. But this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Celebrate European Week of Sport this September at the Be Active Festival. An action-packed day out for the whole family at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Come and try new sports, fitness challenges and skill tests at Ireland's biggest sporting festival. Meet sporting legends. Check out the Inflatable Zone, Village Food Market and much more. There's something for everyone at the Be Active Festival. Saturday, September 24th at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Book your tickets now at beactivefestival.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
OTB AM, Thursday morning, and we're turning our attention now to French football. And French football writer Philippe Auclair joins us on the line. Morning, Philippe.
Morning to you.
Thanks for taking our call. France's sports ministry has ordered an investigation into allegations of sexual harassment and a toxic culture against its president. It seems there are several cases been reported by Soft Foot, the French football magazine, and the Federation saying this week that they'll sue Soft Foot for defamation. Where is it all at? And bring our viewers who are unfamiliar with the story up to speed if you can.
If I can, because it's a long story and it has a number of characters. And by the way, there are two things here. One of them is the allegations made by Soft Foot, which is basically they paint a picture of a French FA in which basically anything goes, and from the top to the bottom almost, with inappropriate behavior, to say the least, inappropriate texts, inappropriate, behavior of all kind towards, in particular, female members of the staff by a number of people high up in the French FA, including, of course, the French FA president, Noël Le Graët, who is now 80 years old, has been in place for, it seems, forever. The most powerful man in French football, perhaps, and whose authority he's now more than questioned. I don't think that he'll be able to stay in place for very long, to be honest, now that the ministry has decided to take on the affair. And also, on top of that, there is what Soft Foot has printed, but there's also what Josimar, the Norwegian magazine, of which I have to say, full transparency here, I'm a contributor. Romain Molina, the French investigative journalist, has published a absolutely harrowing account of basically years and years of silence around sexual abuse cases which were reported to the French FA and not passed on to the authorities. A very, very serious matter indeed. And I think the conjunction of those two things, basically media in France and in Norway, putting all of this in the open, is forcing the Ministry of Sports, who, to be honest, hadn't been made aware of what was going on, to look at it very in greater depth. And I think that a number of people are probably going to lose their positions, but it's a long overdue look at what is happening in the corridors of football power in France. And believe me, what's happening there is not pretty.
It's a very aggressive response from the Federation to say that they may sue for defamation. An unusual response almost in some ways. Philippe, you would almost expect that they would, even from a PR point of view, want to have an image of self-reflection here.
Yes, and I think it's a completely wrong miscalculation. I've read the article by Soft Foot again, by the way, this very morning, and I thought, okay, it was very punchy. Some of the things that they said were very incriminating, but looking at it, I'm wondering, is there anything really defamatory in that? I mean, the French defamation and libel laws are not quite the same as they would be in the United Kingdom, or I'm told in Ireland, where they're extraordinarily strict. And loaded towards the person who is the target allegations. In France, it would rather be the opposite. When you think, for example, that a French website, Blast, was able to print out a claim that the philosopher Bernard-Henri Lévy had taken something like 11 million euros directly from the government, was sued and won its trial, despite the fact of there having absolutely no proof that this had been the case. You think that the French FA, you would think twice about calling into question things, such as the testimonies which have been published by Soft Foot, the excerpts from telephone conversations that they've been quoting. It seems that they're on very solid ground here. And my reading of it is that they felt that they had no other choice this time than to react, because otherwise it was going to spread and spread and spread, and to become impossible to go any further. So in a way, perhaps it was a means to stop other media propagating what Soft Foot had been writing, because obviously it had been reported in many major media, which Soft Foot is not. It's a well-read, popular magazine, but it's not, like a François or Libération. I say François, not François, Le Monde or Libération, Le Figaro. It is a small publication, but the news was starting to be taken on by other media, much more important media, and put out in the open to the whole of the French public opinion. And I think that they decided, okay, we want to stop the rot right now. So we're going to sue for defamation, which means that other people who would want to quote from that piece might also find themselves in trouble and decide we're not covering this anymore. Well, this has badly misfired, because now the dossier is with the minister. It's all over the front pages in France. I mean, French football is all over the front pages in France for all the wrong reasons at the moment, I'm afraid.
Philippe, just interesting to read some comments from Noël Le Grit earlier in the week when he was speaking to L'Equipe about his future in the role. He was talking about, if my health remains stable, if I'm well, there's absolutely no reason for me to stop. I'm very good at my job and everyone likes me. I'm lucky to be appreciated. But he hasn't actually responded publicly to the accusations as of yet, has he?
No, hasn't. And I think that it's now the matter is sub judice, so it's a perfect means for them as well to stay silent about it, saying it's now, there's a defamation action on, so therefore I cannot possibly comment on that. And as to the opinion he has of himself, it's his right prerogative to have it. I'm afraid that in France it's perhaps the only one at the moment.
We will watch events and no doubt catch up with you on that again down the track. Talk to us about other, and in the context of what we've just been speaking about, much less serious developments, but Kylian Mbappe's grip on French football is extending now to the French Football Federation, it seems, this week. I read with, I don't know what exactly my emotion was, but the possibility that KFC were going to sue the French Football Federation potentially, although I see they've since reversed out of that position.
Yes.
For the Mbappe's failure to endorse their product. Where is this story at the minute, and how is it going to unfold?
Well, I mean, the story is actually fascinating, and it's actually a very important story. I know it might sound crazy when you think it's about fried chicken and a professional footballer. What's the point? No, the point is very serious, that Kylian Mbappé told the French Federation that he would not take part in the photo shoot which had been planned at the training camp. And the reason why he refused to take part in this photo shoot to start with was because his image rights were not respected, and the French Federation was not dealing with the problem of image rights properly, which is a bigger issue, as you can understand. And there was panic, obviously, in the French Federation camp. So they hastily put together a statement in which they said they would look again at the convention, the agreement, if you will, between their players and the federation when it comes to exploiting their image rights for FFF commercial sponsors or partners. So it's actually a big story because A, Mbappé won, which is not exactly a surprise. He's the boss. And B, I think it will encourage a number of other footballers of that caliber to go to their federations and to say, you know what, you're using our likeness to promote this, to promote that. Very often we're not even aware of the fact that our faces are used to promote this, promote that. And this actually is going to, I think, create quite a stir and have a big impact on the way that footballers relate in economic terms, that is, to their federation and to the national team. But in this particular case, there can only be one winner, and the winner is, of course, Kylian Mbappé.
Yeah, I spent some time in France over the summer and got to see up close the love that there is for Kylian Mbappé, and I wondered if this, in conjunction with obviously the spat that's ongoing at PSG, whether it impacts negatively on his brand or it just grows the brand of Kylian Mbappé now.
I think these are two different things. What's happened at PSG, the fact that people keep talking about the relationship between the triangle, that is, Neymar, Messi, Mbappé, and what's happened with this image rights. I think when it comes to the image rights, I think most people would say he's perfectly in his right to do what he wants to do. And if he doesn't want to take part in a photo shoot, he doesn't want to take part in a photo shoot. I mean, there's a slight part of... I have to say, I mean, I would call it hypocrisy or certainly double standards when it comes to the player, because I'm not aware of the fact that once he might object to publicize a fast food brand on, for health reasons, ethical reasons, the number of things that PSG is partnering, including very shady betting operators, and it doesn't seem to have a problem with that. So I think there's a little bit of double standards here. We shall see.
Philippe, I'm just while we're speaking about PSG and Ligue 1, looking at one of the games at the weekend, a red card after a matter of seconds, 40 seconds, 9 seconds. Sorry, the previous record was 40, of course. And like looking at the stats and the numbers so far this season, so 11 red cards during game week 3 of the Ligue 1 season was the most given in a single game week since records began in the 91 to 92 season, and they have by far, when you compare Ligue 1 to other top leagues across Europe at the minute, 34 red cards already given in Ligue 1 in just 8 game weeks. The next highest is La Liga, which has 20, so 14 less. Like and it's the same, by the way, in Ligue 2, Ligue 2 in France as well. 43 red cards, the highest of any major division in Europe. What's going on, Philippe? Have referees been told to stamp down for stronger this season, or what's happening in France football at the minute?
Well, you've given the answer here. Yes, there have been instructions given to referees to be a bit stricter in their application of the laws, and they've certainly taken that instruction very seriously. And basically, they're showing red cards here, there, and everywhere. They've always been card happy in French football. I mean, more card happy than in other leagues. Certainly, more card happy than in the Bundesliga or the Premier League. It's just this year it's gone completely crazy. And what is even crazier is that we are now using VAR, and very often the VAR would give a referee a little bit of leeway to reconsider, his opinion. Of what has happened on the pitch. And in this particular case, it seems almost to have encouraged people to brandish more red cards. And that's not great for the spectacle, because a game in which a defender is sent off after 9 seconds, I mean, he's only going to finish one way, is it? So again, there's a debate about that. And also, I think more interestingly, there is a debate when it comes to international football, because these referees, some of them also referee in European competitions. And if the standards are not the same, say in England, where referees have been given the precisely opposite instruction, which is to let the game flow as much as possible and perhaps to excess. And in France, we have the very opposite. Well, we need to know, when it comes to Europe, be it club or national team competitions, what exactly is the standard that people should expect? How should our referees referee, I don't know, in the Nations League or the Europa Conference League, whatever, if they come from completely different approaches of the laws of football? And that's what we have at the moment. And perhaps the difference is greater today, I would imagine, than it's probably ever been in terms of the way that the laws are put into practice by the referees. And that's a little bit concerning.
It's funny, like, if nothing else, it's probably a strange sociological experiment in that, a lot of the players playing in Ligue 1 who maybe go on to the World Cup, are we going to see them being more conservative in the tackle, talking back less to referees? I'd be interested to see what impact this is going to have.
It's very interesting, actually, what you're saying. And it might actually impair some of those players. You don't know, they might not go for a tackle which would be accepted in an international competition, but which in France would be seen very harshly by the referee, and they might actually change their view. Isn't it a bit much to ask players themselves to switch from one understanding of the way the law is going to be applied from one competition to the next? Is that normal? I don't think so.
It does seem unfair. Philippe, thanks a million.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Philippe Auclair on the line, and there's plenty more to talk to Philippe about, again, down the track as well, in terms of the actual football on the field as well. The excitement about William Saliba particularly is big there, and not to mention Canada. So loads of stuff that we will come back to on that again. A few comments that have come into us. It's 8:33. It's Thursday morning, wherever it is you're joining us this morning. Very good morning to you, and do keep the comments coming in. Commenter on YouTube says, Shane, this was the conversation we were having earlier on about your point about Kevin McStay using his media profile to get himself the gig. Declan Murphy says, first of all, McStay, it was there, and
probably for the better.
That's gone. McStay, All-Ireland club winner and Connacht Intercounty winner, not hired off media profile. Laughing emoji, says Declan. Good morning.
No, it's fair. I'm not saying he was hired simply based off his media profile, but it kind of hurt his chances. I mean, Ray Dempsey has a good CV as well, but it's just an interesting trend in that McConville and O'Rourke and others have also gone down that line of dipping into and it's happened in hurling as well. There's a number of managers who have kind of been in the media eye and then gone on to management. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think there's something there perhaps.
There was a comment there that Colm has just deleted on me, saying that basically questioning whether you were using your own media profile to secure the football captaincy
for Monaghan Town. No, I'd like to think my leadership on the pitch, Adrian, is the reason I got the armband. That's what I would like to think. Now maybe that's my ego talking, but
of course it is.
Well, I wasn't captain last season, and I was. The texture's wrong. The texture's wrong. My leadership qualities is what got me the job.
That's the way to continue with this gig. Adam Hetherington on YouTube, good morning to you, Adam, says looking forward to all the snooker and F1 and of course the outing of the Monaghan Mafia.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Kerry Mafia, I know very well from different trips, both down there and around Dublin and up to Monaghan as well. So they're louder and perhaps more noticeable in the public eye than the Monaghan Mafia. We like to keep a very, very incognito appearance at matches. We're very private, so you won't hear much about the Monaghan Mafia. But I will shout from the rooftops about all things Monaghan on the show, no doubt. And snooker and Formula 1, obviously.
A chicken fillet burger, Jesus, says Anna Fee. Brian Dawson says when Southgate's England played a good team, they lost. He's great at beating inferior teams. He's been fantastic at navigating easier ways to semi-finals. And a shifty lad, good morning to you, shifty lad. Mid-season World Cup will definitely play into England's hands. All fully Premiership fit instead of long hard season, definitely winnable, he says. So yeah, we will see about all of that, and other comments in there as well. Ross Kavanagh says, story lads, listen to the show every morning for the last few years. Actually helps me get through work every day. Was devastated to see Owen go and was worrying about who's going to replace him. Absolutely delighted that it's Shane Hannon. Well done, Shane. One small step for Shane, one giant leap for Monaghan.
Oh, that's a lovely comment. Ross, thank you. And that's not my dad or my mum using a burner account, to my knowledge. But thank you, Ross. We're glad it helps you through your morning.
He's definitely tied a few bits and pieces there together. Right, do keep those comments coming into us over the course of the morning with you until 10. We're going to have Michael Verney in the studio in just a little bit for You Had to Be There, and some interesting selections for him. So we will do that in a little bit. I did get the opportunity yesterday to get down to Dromoland Castle Golf Club.
Oh,
Shane.
yeah.
This is our first tee. It's the 10th. We started at the back nine. This is Nathan Murphy.
No pressure.
Wait for it. Four left. That was Nathan getting it away at the 10th. It didn't get much better for a while. This is the what a picturesque. Look at Dromoland Castle in the background there. This is the
good form there, Adrian. Yeah.
Look at the ball.
Yeah.
Straight onto the green.
Beauty.
Good Westmeath Niall Horan swing on you there.
That was probably one of my worst shots today.
Was it?
It was a brutal, and it was one of those ones like there's so many at a golf course where you just want to put back in the
picturesque.
That's myself and Nathan and Johnny there, and that's Laura Beveridge, Scottish player. Really good company. We had her for the second nine, and she was really good company. She had her caddy with her, Keel, so it was like give it just an interesting sort of point of difference for us. You know, we were able to bounce off a few ideas, whatever, and we'd gotten to the 16th and I was just a bit off the fringe, and it was there wasn't much room to work with between the fringe and onto the green, and a really narrow pin, so there was almost nothing to work with. But like, I'm not going to be overcomplicating that. I'm going to play a little pitch and wedge and sort of run it up as close as I can, and that's how that's going to work. I'm not overly thinking it. I'm a bit of a Dustin Johnson at the best of times. There's myself and Nathan.
Hold on a minute.
Nice bit of branding in the background there.
OTB Sports, yeah, you're trying to point at the OTB Sports branding there. That actually reminds me of something, that attempted point. Yeah, that'll be one. Timo, that's another one. Yeah, a very terrible point. Look at that. You're literally pointing at the foot of the tree.
I did see you flirting away earlier on. I was wondering, what's that fella up there? That makes sense. That green was actually exactly where this incident took place. So
where was the green over there?
It was where the camera was.
Wherever you weren't pointing to.
We were facing it. So I was lining up the shot, and I played it nice and simple, and the caddy was standing way over here. He was standing like 25 yards over here on the other side of the green, and he was like, I was just about to take a shot, and he goes, whoa, hit it over here. And I was like, what is the easiest, most polite way that I can say to these nice people, thank you for the suggestion, but I'm not doing that. That's just a ludicrous thing. And then Laura was like, no, we dropped a ball here yesterday, and if you drop it here, it rolls all the way back there. I thought, okay, she said it now, so the player said it. I'm absolutely obliged to play the shot, so let's just assume that this hole is a write-off. She was stood sort of at the top of a bank. She was like, okay. I was like, what sort of pace? Play it up, let it roll down, grand. played the ball out, little pitch and wedge, rolled it up the little sort of face of the mound halfway up the green, and sure enough, it reaches the pinnacle, and there's that little moment where this could overrun and it's going to get very embarrassing.
Yeah.
And it just trickled back over the edge, Shane, back down towards the pin, about 5 or 6 feet away. Absolute, like the greatest shot that I will ever play.
Do you know what I think is
around the fringe?
Do you know what the funniest thing is? Like, and really coincidental is the fact that great shot you mentioned that you hit wasn't filmed, and like the shot that was filmed was the worst shot of the day. Like that, you'd almost say it was fluky or coincidental or unfortunate maybe from your perspective.
We should have rolled the tape. I accept that. We really should have rolled the tape, but I wouldn't have had to explain all that.
Well, you had witnesses. I'll take your word for it.
Dromoland is in, the witnesses who will definitely not endorse what I was saying there.
Who won between you and Nathan? Or is that similar?
Nathan probably would have won that. Yeah.
He plays more regularly, does he?
Yeah. He'd be playing quite a bit. Yeah, but Dromoland was in absolute exceptional form. We also had Christina Napoleova for our first 9, and she was brilliant company, and former Czech Republic football international.
Right.
So really interesting
all-rounder
story. Really enjoyed it. Dromoland in great shape. The KPMG Women's Irish Open is going to be absolute cracker over the course of the next few days, so we'll be definitely keeping an eye out on our 2 players and keeping an eye on them up close and much more personal. Aisling O'Reilly, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How's it going?
How are you keeping?
Good now, not too bad. Just what you said about Dromoland Castle, Adrian, it's absolutely immaculate. Just so stunning, and there's been a lot of work done over the last year or so to get ready for this, and it is going to be the first of a 3-year deal for them to host the venue. So it's it's amazing to see the growth of the course and everything that's been done. But I was hearing all about it. I didn't get to see you in action yesterday, but
I'm sure there were. I'm sure the evening was filled with chat about it, Aisling.
Yeah. The rumours, because I didn't know you were playing, because I definitely would have went out and had a watch. But a few people said, "Yeah, did you not see them out there?" And I was like, "Geez, no." They said nothing. They obviously were keeping it hush hush.
We were the ones having great fun and playing bad golf. I think that's what was going on there. You're right. They have obviously done so much work down there. They've spent about £3 million over the last couple of years to get it up to scratch. And there was a big excitement out around the course about the fact that the Irish Open was back on the LET schedule.
Absolutely, and I think it's so important. Like, it's 10 years since it was last on, and that was in Clean Castle in County Meath. And to think back, that was when Leona Maguire was a 17-year-old amateur playing in that game. So when you think about that, and she talked about that yesterday, and being up against professionals and what that done for her to be able to be around that environment for a young Irish golfer, that was everything for her. And she thinks, it really helped in her development, and to give her that hunger and fight, and to be able to see it, that it's possible to go on and, play with these professionals. So I think it's so exciting that it's back, and it's amazing for some of the Irish amateurs that are going to be involved as well this week. It's great for them, and it's just great for the game as a whole, and of course for the game in Ireland. And there's going to be so many people coming out. Like, the ticket sales are going well, so they're expecting the crowds. And I think when you have someone like Leona, you can definitely feel the excitement, the anticipation is definitely building, and you'll definitely see a big crowd around her, because I was at Galgorm about last month now, and you could see the Calvin jerseys dotted around the place. People come out to see her, and I think it's going to be no different this week, and she's hoping to have a big week.
I was listening, Aisling, this morning on the drive up to yourself chatting with Katrina Matthews and Leona yesterday. A bit of concern about they were obviously complimenting Dromoland and the state that it's in, and the greens playing very, very well as well, and fast. The rain could cause some issues today, depending on how it lands down there, I guess.
Yeah, it was raining this morning. It was raining quite heavily last night, so that was something they were a little bit worried about. And they did say that the course is quite tricky. So I think Adrian sort of testified to that there a minute ago. On it,
really tricky, shots. Playing very tough, very tough.
Yeah, so I suppose it depends how it works out, how it suits them, and they did talk about it being very, very tricky. So I think when you have rain on top of that as well, they talked about having to adjust their game. But look, they're professionals at the end of the day, and they're well used to all different weather conditions. So I think they're well prepared for it. And I think coming to Ireland, like Katrina talked about, she has her rain jacket, she's all her rain gear. She's like, I'm well prepared. This was going to be the situation. So they're not too worried about it, but hopefully it just doesn't cause any delays to the competition as a whole.
Leona's inclusion has been such a big boost for it. She was obviously confirmed in the last few weeks, and it would have, I'm sure, put a big pressure on her schedule. And I see that she was chatting yesterday about trying to get a different date for it to make it more accessible for her. And I mean, I think that the organisers will probably just have to listen to that and say, grand, you're the main draw, what do you need?
Yeah, you really do feel the excitement from her that she's here. She wanted to be here. That was the big thing, speaking to her. And she's just really looking forward to getting out there today. And I think having her involved, there's definitely just another level of anticipation to the event. You can definitely feel that buzz around the course. Like, she's had a good year so far. She's secured her maiden LPGA Tour victory. She got that career best finish as well. She finished tied for fourth in last month's. That was the AIG's, the Women's Open at Murfield. So I think a win at home in her first Women's Irish Open as a professional will be very special for her. Like, she, as I said, competed 10 years ago. So to be back now and to achieve all she's achieved, to go on and get a win would be everything for her. But as I said, the course is quite tricky. If it suits her or not today, we'll see. We'll know a lot more after today. But yeah, it would just be amazing to have her go on and get a victory here. But even just to go out and have a good week. And yeah, there definitely is a great buzz about the place. And you see the amateurs are very excited to be able to go up and to speak to Leona. Obviously to get that advice and everything that she's been through. You know, they're sort of at that place now in their lives where they're hoping they can go on and do what she's done. So yeah, it's brilliant to have her involved. Yeah, but no doubt there'll be plenty of Cavan jerseys down at Dromoland across the weekend. Like, really interesting to hear her chatting with you as well, Aisling, talking about, you know, her influences growing up for herself and Lisa, and, you know, watching Padraig Harrington win those majors, and even Serena and Venus Williams' impact on them as well growing up. But really, really fascinating. As you mentioned, she's got her maiden LPGA Tour win sewn up, and she's been a star of the Solheim Cup. But to win your home tournament, and for any golfer across the world this is important, but I get the sense from Leona that winning the Women's Irish Open is you know, crucial in terms of her development and for her ambitions as well. Yeah, I think so, Shane. Like, she talked about the Solheim Cup yesterday and how amazing it was to be able to get back to Cavan and to see the crowds, and she really couldn't believe the amount of people that came out. And other girls involved in the Solheim Cup team, you know, they went home and there was nothing. And they were all saying to her, geez, we all should have came to Ireland. Like, the fuss that went on about you was unbelievable. You know, she was going around in, you know, the back of a open pack BMW with her granny and all her family around. It was amazing to see. So I think for her, it's about being at home. It's about doing it in front of the fans, around her family or friends, and being able to get that big win here. And like an Irish Open, like, it's not been on for 10 years, as we said. So to be able to do this, it would be absolutely amazing for her. So I do think it's something that she would love to do. But at the same time, she always says she doesn't want to put any pressure on herself and go out and try and play the best golf she can play and go from there. But yeah, I think we know it'd be unbelievable. It'd be a great story, wouldn't it, if she was the winner this week.
And the main, in terms of the pairings today, and it's live on Sky if people who can't get down there want to check it out, and obviously get down there is the other point. 5-1 is all eyes on the first tee.
Yeah, absolutely. So 5-1 is Leona Maguire. She's alongside Katrina Matthew, who we mentioned there. So she's the defending champion 10 years ago, Clean Castle. She got the victory there. So she'll be one to watch as well. Aileen Walsh as well. She's an Irish amateur. I think we need to watch out for her. She's probably my one to watch this week. She's the winner of the Leinster Women's Championship, a member of Lahinch Golf Course where she won the AIG Women's Senior Cup earlier this month. But she's also a member of Dromoland Castle, so that's where obviously it's taken place today. So I do think that, you know, that's going to stand to her. So I think to watch out for her. She teed off at just there 8:30 alongside Belgium's Manon Duroy and Caroline Headwall of Sweden. So I think she's one to watch as well this week.
Yeah, well, we'll be checking him with you over the course of the week. Enjoy it, Aisling.
Thanks so much, lads.
Cheers. Aisling O'Reilly on course there for the KPMG Women's Irish Open at Dromoland Castle. It promises to be an absolute cracker week. And as Aisling has been pointing out, if Leona could keep herself in the mix, ideally at the top or a couple of shots back heading into the weekend, it really will start to capture the mood of the imagination that, in a way, with any home open, you kind of need that thing. Like, it's, you know, it's the same with the men's open, that just keep that bubbling along, and that's the one that'll pull in the people who are sort of have some awareness of Leona, not much awareness of golf, not much awareness of the Irish Open. That's the bit, if that competitive thing is happening across Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, like, and Leona's someone who doesn't seem to put too much pressure on herself, and she doesn't really set herself specific targets or ambitions, certainly publicly or verbally, but yeah, winning a home Open, winning a Women's Irish Open for her would be one of the pinnacles of her career. And I know she's done so much already, but like, it's hard to believe she was so young when she was playing in Killeen Castle at that Irish Open 10 years ago. Like, I think she was 17. If she's 27 now, she was 17 back then. And even Katrina Matthew joking yesterday with Aisling as well, talking about the fact that she's the defending champion, but for a tournament that was 10 years ago. So it's a long time to be remaining the defending champion. But Jesus, it's going to be set up very nicely, and I know everyone in Ballyconnell and everyone in Cavan and everyone in Ireland generally would like to see Leona do the business this weekend, so best of luck to her.
Good picture of Brian Driscoll, actually, who was down at the Pro-Am yesterday as well, getting his drive away there in one of the holes. I saw him hit one shot yesterday. It was on the ninth hole, which is in giant inverted commas drivable par 4 if you're very long off the tee. And when we came up, we were chatting to a couple of the spotters and stewards who'd been knocking around, and they were giving us great encouragement and having a bit of crack with us. And they were like, "Oh, no," I was like, 3 or 4 people, "Are you going to go for the green?" And I was like, "No, there's absolutely no chance I'm going for the green, because it's going straight in the drink, which was right in front."
Yeah.
You know, it's like the showcase, one of the showcase holes coming back in towards the clubhouse, and she was like, "There's only like 4 or 5 players who've actually managed to hit the green today."
Right.
Brian O'Driscoll being one of them. I saw him hit one shot from afar, and it turned out it was that one yesterday. So he's obviously an exceptional
He's
golfer.
playing a lot of Pro-Am tournaments, and he seems to be giving a lot of time to the golf at the minute, which is great. And he's like, I suppose, I don't know what he's playing off at the minute, but I mean, he's put so much time into it that you'd love to see him properly in action and follow him around, because obviously in Pro-Ams a lot of focus is on the golfers themselves, but yeah, in celebrity terms, Brian's right up there.
Right, here's what's happening across the back pages for you this morning. We'll have John in studio in just a little bit, where he'll bring us up to speed with everything that's happening very latest in live sport this morning. And we still have Michael Verney to come, who'll be talking to us about his list of 5 things from You Had to Be There. So that's all to come, and there's loads of great comments as well coming into us this morning, so do keep them firing into us this morning. It's coming up on 10 to 9. So the Irish Independent for you this morning, one of the few papers, I have to say, and maybe surprisingly so, that has gone with a back page splash picture of Leona Maguire at Dromoland Castle yesterday ahead of the big week there. I would have thought that a lot more than would have got behind it, but not the case. GAA powers look to scrap league finals in football, writes Colm Keys here as well on the back page of the Irish Independent. Kenny's Ireland will reach major finals, says Matt Doherty there, and Lancaster in the line for Racing move, writes Keane Tracy over there. But the league finals being scrapped to make a bit of space in the calendar.
I don't like this at all.
Not having it.
No, and look, I'm coming at this from a perspective of I don't have the calendar answer. I don't have the necessarily the knowledge to say where it's going to go, depending on the the start of the league and the championship. Like, they're talking about continuing with the hurling finals because their championship starts slightly later than the football, but ditching the football finals. Like, I think this is a big shame. Even the year where the final was cancelled during COVID, we kind of lost that opportunity to watch Dublin versus Kerry, and you might call it shadowboxing in a league final, but it's also an opportunity for fans to go see some silverware and see how the teams are looking that close to the championship. Like, I remember 2005 when Monaghan won a Division 2 league title, and the joy, and it's probably the same in counties like Westmeath as well, where you get a little bit of silverware and it gives everyone in the county a boost. If you take away that opportunity and just give the top 2 teams promotion, could you still crown a champion without having a final? It's not the same. You could say whoever finishes top of the group after the 7 games deserves to be champion anyway, but we've seen so many times over the years the team that finishes second goes on and wins the final in Croke Park when the silverware is on the line, and I think that's where the excitement is. Look, as I said, I don't have necessarily the answer in terms of where the final goes. Maybe you push everything a further week. Obviously that eats into the club calendar as well, so maybe that's not the answer. But I just think
something has to give. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And it's never going to be everybody's satisfaction, and that's kind of fair enough. For me, I would kind of like if they would settle on a bloody calendar and just leave
Stick with it.
Why do we have to be having this debate all the time about the fixture schedule? I mean, there's so much more good stuff to be chatting about the GAA. It's so not an irrelevant conversation, because it does have an impact on the schedule, but the conversation itself about the bloody fixtures.
It's a boring conversation. Nobody cares. GA fans are sick to the teeth of hearing about it. And this type of conversation comes up all the time. And
it has to be spoken about if it's going to happen.
Yeah, we have to. And it ties in directly to the whether or not league finals happen. Look, maybe a lot of the people watching and listening this morning disagree completely that the league finals aren't really all that important. I just feel that it's a day out, and it's an opportunity to see the teams in Croke Park, see how they fare against each other, and have a chance to win silverware legitimately in a final where there's a little bit of drama. So that's my take on it.
The Irish Mirror this morning spurred on. Doherty wants Irish starts just as Conte is demanding. Matt Doherty keen for Stephen Kelly to follow Conte's orders by handing him a first start of the season against Scotland, writes Paul Lennon there. Next Katie date is set. It looks like she'll be finding at Wembley at the end of October. There'd been some chat about Croke Park a few weeks ago. That would look unlikely to happen before the end of the year, I would think, if that fight was to go ahead. The Irish Times for you. Doherty looking to put lack of game time behind him. That's that same story there. Dykes and the double of Scotland eased to win, which of course has knock-on ramifications for Ireland. A big win for Scotland last night. Very impressive stuff. John McGinn back to it, and him playing really well last night and scoring brings back into focus why this sort of play and stuff is not happening at club level for him, and basically increasing the heat. What he's done last night is increase the heat on Stevie G. That's the main takeaway. Forget about Scotland winning, forget about the impact in Ireland. Stevie G's in bother again. Yeah,
he hasn't really increased the heat on Stephen Kenny, but it really puts a different feel to the game.
Stevie G.
Yeah, but I'm Stephen Kenny as well. I'm saying that there's a bit of heat because of the result last night. Obviously Stevie G as well at club level begins to put the pressure on. But I suppose the good thing was sorry, it sounds very bad to say it, but Nathan Patterson's injury for Scotland, not necessarily a good thing, but it could be a good thing for us on Saturday night, but also for Seamus Coleman at club level. Might get some more game time at Everton as well.
The Irish Times, by the way, I should mention as well, Gerry Thornley seemed to be leading the way with the Stewart Lancaster to take over at Racing story, so we should definitely mention that. I'm a believer. Doherty backs Kenny's vision for Ireland's side. The Irish Daily Mail writes Philip Quinn there. The Lancaster story by Rory Keane. And Lake put faith in Dolan as manager, writes Neil Clifford there too. The Irish Star is you can Conte on me. That's a good one. Matt back Spurs boss plan. That is inside. Grealish not Sue bothered. It's a nice little bit of beef bubbling up between Graham Souness and Jack Grealish, and I am here for it. The more of it, I'm sure he'll be on TalkSport later today, and he'll have a little bit to say back about Jack Grealish's comments about
no doubt
why he's picking on him all the time. Richard Dunn in the running to replace Keith Long at Dalymount Park at Bohemians. Hal, fire friendly as awesome hurling has come to Dublin. This is a friendly against Norway that's been lined up, and we can. Doherty Scotland route showed that Ireland have the talent to qualify. John Duggan, good morning to you.
Adrian and Shane, how are we doing?
Good. There's so much interesting stuff going on there. Richard
what would you like to talk about?
Well, Richard Dunn, we haven't mentioned at all. I don't know how, there's a few Derek Penders in the mix, Vinnie Perth is in the mix, Richard Dunn is in the mix. I don't know. It's an exclusive by Owen Cowser here in The Sun. I don't know, is it like he's loosely in the mix and this not really going to happen, or if it's a viable thing?
I'd be surprised if it happens, but I don't know. Like, maybe they have better information than I have, but I'd be surprised if Richard Dunn is the next Bohemians manager. He
has his badges in a way that Derek Pender doesn't, which might be to his favour.
It'd be fun if he had Dunn on the duffer.
Oh, it'd be amazing. He doesn't have, obviously he's done a bit of work with the Ireland under-16s, I think it was at some point. He does, so his CV is not great, but I mean, I just think, obviously Shane was talking about earlier on about like players, former players doing punditry and how they keep themselves in the spotlight. He obviously does that pretty regularly with Virgin Media, so I mean, it'd just be a great extra wrinkle of interest for.
Yeah, I can't see it happening personally, but look, as I said,
come on, entertain us for a few minutes.
No, I don't do fake entertainment. Fake news, fake entertainment, Barry.
Have a go at Jack Grealish there. Come on, give us what you want. GA Powers look to scrap league finals in football. JD was one that myself and Shane were chatting about earlier on. What's your view?
I know what he's going to say here. I know what you're going to say, John. Go on.
My view is that the league is the best competition. It should be the championship. It isn't the championship. We had a chance to do that last year. It failed. And I was reading through the Irish Independent report, and they're going to push the All-Irelands back by about a week to the end of July. I still think the championship is too squeezed, and we're seeing it now the last couple of months that I think Pat Spillana's right, that the inter-county game is the vehicle to provide money for the clubs and for facilities and for the association not to have their best competition in the shop window the last couple of months and having it all too squeezed, where you have a preliminary competition that who can remember who won the league 20 years ago? Who can remember who won the league 10 years ago? Just can you give me an answer, the pair of you? Off the top of your head?
Probably
the people from those counties remember though, John.
But you should. We're all sports fans. We're all sports nerds. We should know who won the league. If we really that deeply interested, we should know who won the league 10 years ago. The league should be for football. It should be the competition in the main, because I'd love to see Division 3 and Division 4 finals of a league in July and August instead of a Tottenham Cup. But that's not going to happen at the moment. So. Could we push the league even further back to, I don't think it's going to start at the end of January. So the whole thing is just too squeezed. And why not push the championship matches back a few weeks? Because you're having championship matches beginning in April, and I don't think psychologically people are even, by the time, like they were talking about in the report today in the Irishman, that the Munster and Leinster hurling finals be on the same day. You know, where's the interest? Where's the talkability? Where's the oxygen for it? It just seems all over very, very quickly. And I do agree with the split season. I think that's benefited club players. But, you know, what is the difference in really 1 month? Is it going to make it that much of a difference?
In terms of the final specifically, like say next year, Division 2, Dublin finish second to Kildare, or first and second, and Kildare finish second. Like, do you care about a league final?
No, I don't really. As a Dublin fan, the championship is the only thing that matters.
Do you think the players care? That's an extra bit of silverware. They'll never have the opportunity to win a Division 2 title again.
Like, really? Are you serious? I'm in one of these moods this morning.
They'll still give out a cup, surely. They'll still get silverware.
You can go down to the trophy shop and get a cup. You know, so.
But they'll give it to the team that there just won't be a final. It's like it's the reverse Todd Bowley.
Just feels a bit more empty not to have the league final.
I think for Division 3 and 4 teams, it's really important. Absolutely, a day in Croke Park.
What about Mayo winning the league a couple of years ago? Like, big deal for them. They took it very seriously. It was silverware, national silverware, Division 1.
They trade 100 leagues for one All Ireland.
Yeah, of course. But and maybe the excitement was because
Clare won the league a few years ago in hurling. Didn't matter, Jot. Didn't matter. But it's a great competition. It's a great preparatory competition. I think it's a great competition for teams in Division 3 and 4. But because it doesn't have the meaning that the championship has, and the championship's too squeezed.
It didn't matter, but say those Clare players in 20 years' time, or those Mayo players in 20 years' time, sitting in a pub reminiscing on their careers, they're not going to think back and say, do you know what, I'm actually glad I look back on my career and I won a Division 1 league title.
Look, maybe they will. I'd be of the view that they'll probably be thinking about the All-Irelands and the Munster titles they lost, or that they won, rather than that, you know. Like the whole narrative of Clare hurling was in 1977 and 78 we won the league, and we're one of the best teams in the country, but we couldn't get out of Munster, and it was soul destroying, and it took until 1995 for it to happen. I remember, I think Dublin won the league title in 1987. Once you get into the championship and losing to Meath, like, your whole summer's in devastation. So I don't think it carries the meaning that the championship does.
I remember when Malachy O'Rourke first took over Monaghan in 2013. They were a Division 3 team. They won the Ulster title that year, but they started that year by winning the Division 3 title. The following year, the second successive promotion, won a Division 2 title. And I know those players, I've spoken to different members of that panel in recent years. They look back and they say, right, we won 2 Ulster titles. We also won a Division 3 and Division 2 league title.
I think it depends on the county. I think it depends on the county. I think Dublin winning the league in hurling in 2011, I think it was really, really important. Really, really important, and was the stepping stone to Dublin winning the Leinster hurling title in 2013. So you can look back if you're a Dublin hurler and go, yeah, we were nowhere, we won the league title, that was a really big deal. So I think it depends on the context, depends on the county, depends on the circumstance. So for Monaghan, if Monaghan won the Division 1 league title, it would be a really big deal.
Yeah.
Well, they could, and you know, they could still win the league. The thing is, there'll still be excitement at the last round of games.
Absolutely,
you could end up with a matchup of first v second, which would effectively be a final anyway. There'll be everything on the line.
Yeah.
If this team get this score, we could win over here. Like, they'll still all.
Don't know why they can't push the championship start back to the start of May and finish it in August. I don't really see what is the urgency of it. You've got to finish the championship by the end of July, when for 100 years you have them in September. Now, I know the reasons, because you have the split season and all that, and that's all fair and it's all good and it's important for the club player. But it just seems to be this urgency to get this done now, get it all finished by July. Whereas you could have it back a few weeks. Not the third Sunday in September, but maybe the third Sunday in August. And then that would give you the opportunity to have league finals.
JD, give us the lowdown. What's happening?
It's great to see golf at Dromoland Castle in Clare this week. Ashley and O'Reilly's down there, and the KPMG sponsored Women's Irish Open. How will Leona Maguire do over the next 4 days? We also have golfers involved in France. Niall Carney, Jonathan Caldwell, Cormac Sharvin at the Open de France. The President's Cup starting later on. The Shadow Rider Cup almost isn't between the USA and the international team in Quail Hollow in North Carolina. Paul O'Donovan and Fintan McCarthy in the water for the semi-final of the lightweight double sculls at the World Championship in the Czech Republic. Today they're in the boat at 10:35 Irish time. Like, we'd be expecting them to win gold this week. A lot of Irish crews in action, and we'll keep you updated across our bulletins on all the stations across Barra today. Stewart Lancaster, as we said, looking set to go to Racine next summer. We have Shelburne against Shamrock Rovers in the League of Ireland Premier Division tonight at Talca Park, 7:45 start. A win for the Hoops will send them 4 points clear of Derry. Desi Dolan, as we know, is the new Westmeath manager. How are you feeling about that, Adrian?
Positive, yeah, really good. Nice continuation from previously. Slight concern that he hasn't got a huge amount of managerial experience. Has been a selector a little bit, but generally between himself and John Keane and...
it's not John Kane, no?
Right.
I've tried to bring this.
We
up.
already had this in the show this morning.
There's no hard pronunciation on that.
Okay, fair enough.
You're having yourself, but no, there is. I'm very positive about it. / somewhat excited.
Is he the greatest? You mentioned the names in the hat. Like he is the two All Stars. 04 and 08.
John Keane is 2 as well, I think.
No, John Keane is
2 and Desi
is 1.
Yeah.
Does that make John Keane the greatest Westmeath footballer?
I think Desi probably is. I think he probably is. Like, he should have buried Meath that day, obviously, and that'll haunt us all.
Was there a free that Desi had against Meath?
Yeah, there was, yeah. And we would have got into, I don't know, was it like an Ireland semi-final possibly after that? Was that a Leinster?
I was in that Maroon documentary with my microphone and pod.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I was in it, yeah, with my leather jacket.
In Westmeath folklore forever.
All of 18 years ago, yeah. So that's my claim to fame.
Reading earlier that he scored 1-6, and I think on his first ever championship outing first game for Westmeath against Antrim.
Player. We're only getting back now to sort of recovering to where we were when Desi was in his heyday.
Had a great minor and under 21 teams as well.
Yeah, Ireland winners, of course. Yeah.
People underappreciate John Heslin for the fact during the Tailteann Cup, obviously overtaking that all-time Westmeath scoring record last year, and that wasn't an easy target to surpass. So fair play to John Heslin for getting to that level and above.
Katie Taylor back in the ring on October 29th against Karen Elizabeth Carvajal of Argentina in Wembley. And Listowel, we had Busselton winning the Kerry National yesterday. JJ Slevin riding for Joseph O'Brien. Dramatic finish with Hewitt falling at the last. And flat races being staged there today. I'd love to go some year. 8 races being staged from 125 down at the Harvest Festival, lads.
JD, thanks a million.
Right, lads.
9:05, OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. So we've got an OTB Sports Radio over the course of today. Cora Staunton will be the subject of OTB Gold from 1 o'clock today. You'll have leaders' questions, fittingly enough. It's Stewart Lancaster at 3. 4 o'clock, it's a retro panel. It's Kilkenny legends on that. Brian O'Driscoll meets Isa Nasewa from a few years ago, just after Isa had retired. That's OTB Gold at 6. And then Nathan in the hot seat, no doubt, recounting you more tales of how brilliantly he fared at Dromoland Castle yesterday. That's live on your radio from 7 tonight. You can follow OTB across the social channels and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the very best and latest in sports content there. We're going to be back after these live with Michael Verney for the very latest episode of You Had to Be There.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
It was one of the most appalling performances from Bohs. I saw them through the years when the money disappeared and they were teetering on the brink of going out of business, and there were scratch squads put together to try and get through a season and not be relegated, and that was the aim. And yesterday was worse than all of that.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
Celebrate European Week of Sport this September at the Be Active Festival, an action-packed day out for the whole family at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Come and try new sports, fitness challenges and skill tests at Ireland's biggest sporting festival. Meet sporting legends, check out the Inflatable Zone, Village Food Market and much more. There's something for everyone at the Be Active Festival, Saturday, September 24th at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Book your tickets now at beactivefestival.ie.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good. But this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It was so unexpected.
You had to be there.
Covering Celtic at that time was a brilliant thing. The atmosphere at Parkhead was always great.
You had to be there.
Nobody ever talks about this game. Nobody saw it.
You had to be there.
Yeah, it's nearly 9:10. It is Thursday morning. You're watching OTB AM, and it is very much time for You Had to Be There. He's not here, but he is over there. Michael Verney, good morning to you.
Lads, how are you? It's abandoned ship along the quays, unfortunately.
Traffic is brutal.
I found a spot here, and I'm just hoping I'm not ejected or thrown up on the back of a lorry or something during the show, but we'll do our best.
Well, listen, at the very least, we'll do some good numbers out of that, so we'll deal with that if it crops up. We'll get into it because it's a great list. It's notable by some absences, which we might get to in a little bit. But kick us off. We're going to go in chronological order here, and we're kicking off with Joe Canning, Fitzgibbon Cup final 2008.
It was actually only a Fitzgibbon Cup group game. I picked this game probably because I was involved in it myself, and I'd heard so much about Joe growing up, and I'd watched him on TV and various bits and pieces, but it's only when you see someone in the flesh that you realise, okay, this lad is a little bit different. And there's actually a lot of mitigating circumstances with this game. So we had the possibility of playing Portumna in All-Ireland Club Final in 2008. We were both in the semi-finals, and the semi-finals were fixed for 10 days later, and there was this big Fitzgibbon Cup game on the Thursday before that. And we went over to LIT with UL, obviously a big city derby. Joe was full forward for them. I was playing cornerback for UL. He was actually only on the pitch 20 minutes. 20 minutes. And within that time, he had scored a penalty, he had scored 2 frees, and he actually pulled up his hamstring and was leaving the pitch when the ball rolled out over the sideline. And Davy got him to hit the sideline with a strained or torn hamstring before he left the pitch. And he lofted the sideline ball over the bar. And I was just literally an audible gasp of breath and thinking, this lad is built completely differently.
And left the pitch afterwards?
Left the pitch. It was literally the ball was going out over the sideline as he was being helped off by the physio and members of the LIT backroom team. And Davey was literally will you take this? So he gets down, takes the sideline from about 60 yards out with a partially torn hamstring, puts it over the bar, and you're just thinking, this is absolutely ridiculous. That a fella can do this, and he's injured. And then even just other parts of it, then 10 days later he scores 1-9 in All-Ireland Club semi-final against Blackmore. A month after that he breaks our hearts in a club final, and then about 3 or 4 months after that he goes to town on Cork in that famous qualifier. But it was my first insight to see up close and personal just how good. You hear all the talk and you hear what he's done with Portumna Vocational Schools. You see him on TV and in a couple of club finals and big games, and then you see him up close and you're thinking, okay, the talk is totally warranted. This lad is going to be the next hurling superstar, and he was. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. At the end of the game, the game finished up level. We needed a win to go through. They needed a draw to go through. What was the difference? Canning's line ball before he left the pitch. I was literally rubbing my eyes in disbelief at what this guy was able to do, and he's only on the pitch 20 minutes. He's
one of those players, Mick, when you go to watch a match in person, he's actually, we all know he's a big unit, but he's nearly bigger than you expect him to be. Was it the same on the pitch when you're up close? I'm not going to ask you to admit that you were afraid of Joe Canning on the pitch or anything to that effect, but I'm sure when he comes near you on the pitch, you know about it.
Yeah, 100%, Shane. He has all the skill. He's a great hand, great wrist, everything like that. But as well as that, he's about 6'3", 6'4". That time he was only a young fella, but he was such a big, strong physical force. You knew if you got the ball in around him or he got the ball in around you that you were probably going to be blown away, even physically. And that was my first. It was my first time to probably share a field with him.
Where were you playing?
As I said, I was playing cornerback, yeah. So he was in around. He was full forward, so he would have been in around him. Thankfully, he wasn't marking him. But just even just to actually see it up close, and it's probably a throwaway game that very, very few people remember, but I just remember being hit by this kind of bullet almost and thinking, yeah, this guy is going to be something else.
Were you chatting about him before, Mick? Like, was there, obviously the chat had begun, as you say. Did you say it was a couple of months before the 2-12 match?
It was about 3 or 4 months before that 2008 qualifier against Cork down in Semple Stadium, where he really announced himself. You know, I think he hit something like 2-11, and I think he said since that one of his biggest regrets is playing too well on his, one of his early championship games, because the bar was set so high. But just the chain of events that happened, 10 days later he was man of the match in a club semi-final. A month after that he was winning another club title, and then 4 or 5 months later he was delivering probably one of the great inter-county performances. And it was my first time to share a field with him. I just remember thinking, this guy is completely different, and it's nice to know what it's like to even share a field with him and know what he can do on a pitch. And I like, anytime he stepped up to anything in a game thereafter, I was always thinking, yeah, he's probably going to nail this, regardless of whether it's the 4 line balls against Galway in that or against Limerick in that semi-final in 20 or whatever it is. And it's like what Shane says there. It's like going to a match with David Clifford, where David Clifford is player now. You literally think anything is possible, and that given day it was.
I'm putting you on the spot here slightly, Mick, but where does Canning rank in terms of hurling's greatest placed ball hitters?
Oh, Jesus, Shane, very, very high. I'd have TJ Reid up ridiculously high as well, because I just think he's so consistent now, and he's probably a 95, 96%. But as regards being able to hit a line ball from anywhere inside 100 yards and have the potential to score, being able to hit free anywhere 120 yards and maybe even further at times, he's probably right up there, isn't he? Like, he was hitting frees, lads, in All-Ireland club finals when he was 16 or 17. Like, do you know what I mean? And I think he scored a line ball from midfield against Loughrea in a Galway county final when he was 15, senior county final. This is just like, there's lads that are able to put over line balls now. I don't know if anybody will be able to do it as well as he did. And just like, they're not scoring chances, lads, unless you're a freak, and he was an absolute hurling freak.
When you're like you say, you weren't marking him, but just one last one on it before we move on to your next one. Like, when you're on the pitch, or like your man next to you is sort of marking him, like, what's the chat beforehand, or what's the chat on the pitch about, like, given everything you've just said about how impossible a task it is to get the better of him, is it just like, listen, we're just going to accept that he's going to score 10 or 11 points today, and that's it, and if we do that and get out of Dodge, it's not a bad day?
Kind of, yeah. It's kind of like deny. Just keep the ball away from him as much as you possibly can. And it's probably having real serious conversations with guys out the field, where if ball is coming into Canning, it has to be at least bad ball. It has to be a ball that gives the defender a chance, because if he's getting advantageous ball into him, like, you're on a hiding to nothing no matter who you are.
Right, we skip forward 3 years. 2011, it's the Kilkenny Senior Hurling Championship final replay. It's Owen Larkin up against Henry's Ballyhale. Larkin was 27 and he was a well-established Kilkenny player, obviously, at that point. Hurler of the Year in 2008. Set this one out for us.
Yeah, so I was at both games. I was at the drawn game where Henry had to hit free to level it in horrendous conditions, and one of the village players was literally 4 yards away from him with the hurl in his face, and it was not blown or retaken or like that. He just took it and put it over the bar, and it was sent to a replay then. I went down to the replay, and to me, this is the greatest club hurling performance of all time. Literally everything Larkin did on that day turned to gold, and I'm not just talking about his frees, and his frees were impeccable. He hit 8 from 8. He ended up with 111, 8 frees. Literally, his hooking, his blocking, his hand passing, the goal he got was just ridiculous within such a confined space with 4 guys on him. I've never seen as perfect a display of hurling as this. It was a brilliant individual display. It was a brilliant individual display within a brilliant team display. He brought teammates into the game. Conditions were really, really rough. And you know when you just see a guy literally taking the game by the scruff of the neck? He literally took the game by the scruff of the neck. And as you said there, Adrian, this was a Ballyhale team with a young TJ Reid who's going to be one of the best players of all time. Henry, who is widely regarded as, you know, one of the best of all time. Cha Fitzpatrick, young Richie Reid in goals. Colin Fennelly and Jackie Tyrrell actually both got sent off the same day. So, like, the Village were without their other main talisman in Jackie Tyrrell, and Larkin just grew another foot taller. He was completely unmarkable on that day, and I'd encourage anybody to go and find it on Twitter. It's on the Village's account. It's a 60-minute game, 60-minute club game, and there's 4 minutes of outrageous highlights from Larkin. It's literally a highlight reel of, it's everything that encompasses you know, a good hurling display. It's all the scores, all the flicks. He gets back and hooks Owen Reid at one stage and the ball goes wide. I've never seen, it's like, you know, you talk about giving a player 10 out of 10. He literally did not do anything wrong. There were, like, this is Nadia Comaneci-esque. Like, there is no points you could take away from his performance. It was absolutely outrageous.
That's the stamp of a leader, isn't it? You know, when a team goes down to 14 men, some players wilt and kind of curl up under the pressure, but and accept defeat. But you know, when Tyrrell gets sent off in that game, Larkin obviously it almost pushes him on further, as you say, Mick.
Yeah, the great players, I think, Shane, sometimes realise with different scenarios in games, okay, somebody's gone off injured, I need to even rise a bit. And even you could say maybe Shane Walsh the other night for Kilmacud was having a tough evening. Paul Mannion goes off. He probably realises, okay, the pressure is on me a little more now. But the great players don't wilt under that pressure. They grow with that pressure. And definitely Larkin did that day. And it was literally the same day that we're looking out the windows and seeing today. Real wet, miserable afternoon down in Nolan Park. And they're against, you know, one of the great club teams of all time. And this fella just delivers a display that, yeah, I haven't seen the like of it before, and I haven't seen it since. And that's 11 years ago. I always go back to that is, you know, the greatest individual club display I've ever seen. And I've stood in the same pitch as Brian Whelan, where he's done crazy things. But even as good as he was, I'm not sure if he delivered that perfect display like Larkin did here. I remember chatting Niall Rigney about it. He was the James Stephens manager, and he just said, like, as a manager, this is literally dreamland. You're looking at a player literally just lifting the whole team up and taking them by the scruff of the neck. And everything he did seemed to give more lads around him confidence. And I'd say lads around him did things maybe that day that they haven't done or they didn't do before or since, just because of the confidence that he bred into them that day.
Yeah. Like 111.
Like 111 is a scandalous individual scoreline, but then when you think about it, it's probably not even the highest he's ever scored at club level. Like 111 is remarkable individual scoring, but he was probably so used to doing that in the Kilkenny Championship as well, Mick.
Yeah, he would have been. Yeah, he would have been. You know, even he broke onto the Kilkenny panel as a result of having an unbelievable year out centre forward. That was his that was his statement season. I think it was in. Was it 04 or 05 where he was called in as a result of you know, when the Village ended up winning the Club All Ireland. And this is 111 out of 120. And lads, this is before you know, the last 5 or 6 years where lads are probably routinely putting that up at club level. The ball is maybe a bit lighter. You know, hurls are of a lot better standard. Lads are better conditioned probably. This is an absolutely outrageous tally. And I challenge anybody to find a better hurling performance in a club game than this. It's outrageous.
Is it a fair argument? I'm just looking at his Owen Larkin stats for Kilkenny here, and like, he's got the 8 All Irelands, but only two All Stars, Mick. Like, does that hint at an underrated player perhaps at intercounty level?
Oh yeah, underrated would be the word you'd use. He has a hurler of the year in there as well, but I think it's a hurler of the year from 08, the year to beat Waterford in the final. But he definitely would have been underrated, yeah. Just because I suppose it's only natural when you have in the same team JJ Delaney, Tommy Walsh, Noel Hickey, Henry Shefflin, Richie Power, Eddie Brennan. But he was, I just think he was unbelievable throughout his Kilkenny career. They probably haven't replaced him yet, and probably will be a while replacing him in that sense of a real dogged half forward that gets up and down the line and does that work, but can also kill you on the scoreboard as well. And just an unbelievable hand as well. Such a good hand in the air, so deceptive. That left-hander that comes in behind you on the high ball, and very, very hard to deal with. Great player.
They had a tight turnaround then because the replay nature of it, and Jackie suspended, and they lose out to Owlert, I think it was about 6 days later by 3 points. Again, he scores 11 points, by the way, so that's what you're dealing with there. Move on to selection number 3. We're skipping ahead 7 years now, 2018. It's the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. It's Khabib beating McGregor, and the context here, Khabib is the undefeated lightweight champion. McGregor's been stripped of his title, I think, at that point due to inactivity, if I'm right. The Diaz loss and the rematch win was done. It was a year on from the Mayweather nonsense at the same venue, I think, and a bad-tempered build-up.
Yeah, very bad-tempered. I was over there in media capacity. I kind of was letting on.
You didn't need the inverted commas there. We understood.
letting on I was working, but I wasn't really working. It was actually, we were knocked out of the hurling championship with Borough that year, and I tried to turn a negative into a positive. That fight was actually on the same day as my birthday, so I got on to one of my mates who actually lives in China, but was over doing a bit of business in America, and I said, we need to meet in Vegas and try and go to this fight or whatever. So I actually went and got my accreditation, and I was at all the build up to it. And as you say, Adrian, it was very bad tempered. At that time, it was and probably still is one of the biggest UFC fights in history. And there was so much kind of riding on it. I'd enjoy playing a bit of blackjack and playing a bit of roulette, and anything I won in the build up to the fight, rather than losing it at another table, I decided to invest it in McGregor. So I had a good few quid on McGregor going into the fight, and then you kind of see maybe some of the nonsense that he was coming out with in the pressers in the days beforehand, and you might think maybe he's not in the best mental state maybe coming into this fight. But the whole build up to it, like it was at a time when I'd bought into McGregor quite a bit, and he probably hadn't maybe sullied his reputation too much at that stage. But I was kind of nervous even watching the fight. We did a lovely view of the fight. It was absolutely brilliant. It was so tense in the days coming up to it, and even the atmosphere around Vegas was very, very tense. And then the fight started, and Khabib delivered an absolute exhibition of just grappling and being able just to grind McGregor down and just take his striking completely out of the equation. But it was just so tense during the fight. And a lot of this is to do with just having been there for the fight and the build up, and having been there for the absolute chaos after. I've never been at any sporting event that resembled anything like that in the aftermath.
Well, it was like you'd spoke about the nature of the fight, and it was obviously very personal for Khabib, and that became really evident. So there's a 4th round stoppage. He gets him in a neck crank, and McGregor taps out, and Khabib barks down at him from a standing position. Not entirely unfamiliar to Irish football fans, maybe, or Man United football fans, in a way that looks like he's saying almost, "Take that, you star." And he flings his mouthguard down, flings himself over the top of the octagon, and all hell breaks loose. Where were you sat for all that?
I was sat up in the media centre, as I said, working, doing a bit of work. But I couldn't believe what I was seeing, because like he's such a humble, kind of soft-natured fella outside of the octagon, an absolute killer inside, but so respectful. And it was clear how McGregor and maybe members of his team, probably Dylan Dennis in particular, had gotten that much under his skin that it just caused him to completely snap. Imagine to say a guy could be that, not relaxed inside the cage, but was able to stick to his game plan, do everything that he does best. And then nearly the second the bell was rang, maybe there's a few people shouting bits and pieces at him, and he throws his mouth guard and just goes with like a flying kung fu kick in the direction of Dylan Dennis, and I know John Kavanagh wasn't too far away, and it was just absolute chaos. They probably didn't have enough security guards there on the night. It was just madness in the few minutes thereafter, and then we were all trying to get down to the media scrum, to the media tent after, just to see exactly what would happen there, and we were probably waiting about an hour, and Khabib came in and just delivered kind of a speech for about 4.5 minutes, and there was no questions asked or anything like that. He said what he had to say and he left. And I remember a lot of people getting on to me after, because they knew I was over there, and just saying, mind yourself or stay safe or whatever. And I remember being at some sort of a vodka launch or something the day before, one of the big vodka companies that sponsors them, and I just remember getting a picture with these two models, and I just put up a picture maybe the next day and says on Facebook, was like, no need to worry, lads, I'm in safe hands. And it was just everything about it was just a bit mad. And there was a weird vibe around the strip in Vegas that night, a real weird, dangerous, kind of violent vibe about it. I've never been, at a soccer game in Galatasaray or anything like that where there's that kind of violent vibe to it. It was such a strange thing to be involved in, but something that I definitely look back on with great memories, I have to say. It's one of those you had to be there moments. You can
kind of tell through the TV to an extent. You can kind of feel the atmosphere at some of those UFC events, but you can't really. I mean, what's those walkouts, especially, Mick, when Sinead O'Connor comes on over the Tannoy and you've got so many Irish fans in, I think it's 20,000 odd people that can fit into the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas. Like, what was that like, that walkout moment? It's obviously something special when you're there in person.
Yeah, even as we're talking about it here now, I'd have the goosebumps in it, because I love that pageantry element of it. I'd be a big wrestling fan, and I wouldn't hide it. And part of my love of it is the pageantry of it all, and those walkouts, the McGregor walkout. I would have loved to have been there when he fought Chad Mendes, when Sinead was actually singing live. But this was unbelievable, and I think they said it even live in commentary, looking back at the event after. McGregor's entrance is one of the great things probably in all of sport and entertainment. And when he does the Vince McMahon Billy walk around the octagon and all that, it's something that I'd say it has to be kind of seen to be believed. Yeah, I was so nervous even going into the fight, and luckily I didn't need to be partial or anything like that, and I was just there kind of as a fan. But it was definitely something I'd try and do again. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah. Right, and from one, obviously, as you say, we've gotten to know McGregor a little bit more in the meantime, and a lot of things to not like about him. So from one person that I definitely struggle to get behind, to another that the entire country is very much behind and really stole the headline. So I'll paint a bit of the picture, Mick, and you take it up again. It's Rachel Blackmore. It's Aplutar, Cheltenham in the Gold Cup this year. The context here, she'd been doing some brilliant stuff, big wins, Honeysuckle, Aplutar, Envoy Alan over previous years. She'd an entry Grand National under her belt, top jockey at Cheltenham last year, and had done well even on Honeysuckle at Cheltenham that week. But no female jockey had ever won the Cheltenham Gold Cup. That and the disappointment of having come so close in 2021.
Yeah, I suppose that's a lot of it, Adrian, is how much she'd achieved the year before. I wasn't at Cheltenham the year before. There was no Irish media at Cheltenham the year before. She'd had 6 winners. First ever female rider to win the champion hurdle. First female rider to be crowned champion jockey at Cheltenham. But she will even say herself after that, there was a little asterisk beside that Cheltenham, because she was so disappointed, whether it was picking the wrong horse in the Cheltenham Gold Cup. She stayed on Aplutar in 2021 and gave up the ride in Manila Indo, and Jack Kennedy ended up winning the race. And there was maybe a bit of regret of maybe letting Manila Indo get a bit too far away from her and not being able to reel him back in 2021. And for that 2022 Gold Cup, I remember I actually went out and stood infield on the track with Philip Quinn in the Daily Mail at the final fence. And you can't really hear the commentary when you're in there. You're just seeing what you're seeing from fence to fence. And we were looking at the second last jump, and you're thinking she's probably a bit out of contention here. And then all of a sudden, between the second last fence and the last fence, all of a sudden Rachel takes it up. And you're just thinking, I'm standing beside the last fence here, had my phone out, usually wouldn't take any video or pictures or anything like that, but I have a lovely video of Aplutar jumping the last fence with Rachel, and you can just see it, and she's just gone on, and she goes on, and she wins the Gold Cup by the guts of about 20 lengths, and everything she had achieved until that point, as I said, first lady rider to win the champion hurdle, first lady rider to win the entry Grand National, but this is another step up again, and it's not that it was a demon or anything inside of her, but it was her exercising maybe something, or just, getting back a moment maybe that she thought she had lost from the year before, and going on to be a Cheltenham Gold Cup winner. It was unbelievable to be there, and just to see her star go even further into the stratosphere.
Yeah, I remember watching this race at home in the pub, Mick, and like, I guess the fact that it was a reversal of the previous year when Manila Indo won as well, and then the fact, as you say, that it was so dominant, that she pushed on from that final fence and won by what, it was a 15 or 20 lengths, as you say. The dominance of it was probably the surprising aspect.
Yeah, it wasn't, maybe a classic horse race or a classic piece of jockeyship where you're thinking, they get up and win by a head, like that famous AP McCoy ride in Wichita Lyman in Cheltenham, where he's literally cajoling and whatever. This was just Rachel absolutely oozing class, and just to see the aftermath of it. Like, we walked back, myself and Philip Quinn walked back up the chute, like literally behind Rachel, and just to see what it meant to everybody and how she's probably just captured everybody's hearts, and just to be there for a part of history. And I think it's important to stay following her career over the next while. Like, she's just she's rewritten the history books in so many ways already, and I'm sure she will continue to do so. But like, to me, the 6 winners at Cheltenham the year before were unbelievable. But this is the cream of the crop. Every jockey. The 2 races that a jockey grows up wanting to win, a jump jockey, are the Aintree National and the Cheltenham Gold Cup. And she did it, and she did it in such dominant fashion as well.
There's a real Forrest Gump quality emerging here, Mick, between being on the pitch like with Joe Canning, and then you're in the media centre for the McGregor fight, and now you're like coming up the chute behind the winning out Gold Cup winner, and been at the finish line. It's there's definitely a pattern here, but yeah, look, an incredible thing, as you say, like coming 2 from home, and it's the Manila Endo looks like he's heading for home, and that's the way it's going to go. But as Shane said, like a really dominant win in the end. Let's move on to your final pick. It's another very recent one, obviously, if we're going chronologically. It's the All-Ireland hurling final this year, but specifically Gerry Hegarty for Limerick.
Yeah, similar to Owen Larkin's display for the Village in 2011. Like, I would put this inter-county performance up against any other inter-county performance I've ever seen. Here's a guy who has, in the previous 2 All-Irelands, he scored 7 points in 2020 from play. He scored 2-2 in 2021. And you're just thinking, how can he top those 2 displays? Mm-hmm. And he goes and does it. And it's a similar situation to Larkin as well. Needs really, like most at this time. Cian Lynch is not on the pitch. They're 2-time hurler of the year. A player who creates probably so many opportunities for Hegarty. And this guy just, like, he's a big guy at 6'5" already, but he just stands even taller again. And you knew after about 3 or 4 minutes, once he beautifully flicked up that ball for himself and scored one of probably the best goals we've probably seen in an All-Ireland final, past one of the best goalkeepers of all time in Owen Murphy. Yeah, like, just outrageous. Top corner finish, literally, a goal that could not be saved. He finished with 1-5 on the day. Again, for me, it's probably, as a defender, I probably appreciate the work and the graft even more so than the scores. He was back at his own 21 at different stages. We'll never get the GPS stats from these elite teams, maybe until someone does a book at some stage, maybe down the line. But like, he must have been covering close to about 15k that day, and literally he did not probably tire until, I'd say, the 75th minute. He probably tired in the last minute, but up until that point, he was literally flawless. And there's a couple of times he got a ball at one stage in the second half, and Limerick really needed a score. And David Blanchfield, who did well when he came on him, actually comes to tackle him, and Hegarty literally just throws him to the ground. This is a guy who's gone, he had been running hard for probably 72 or 73 minutes before that, and he lofts the ball over from about 100 yards. And you're just thinking, this is an absolute force of nature on this day, literally an unstoppable force. And Limerick needed a performance like that from one of their key men to get over the line, because they were pushed to within a pin of their collar. When you're thinking about all the pressure, 3 in a row, all the pressure, he'd had a poor semi-final. Can he deliver anything like the previous 2 final displays? And he goes out and, delivers something like that. It was probably the best inter-county display I've seen in person. Definitely the best All-Ireland final display I've seen in person.
It was one for the purists as well, Mick, in that you mentioned the early goal, but I think he gets Limerick's last point of the game as well. So as you say, he's going from minute 1 to the last minute, and nice circular feel to a masterful performance when you can lob over the last point of the game for the team as well. Yeah,
exactly, and it's just, you know yourself, where a lad or a lady could score 5 or 6 in the first half, and you could end up getting man of the match or player of the match. But to be able to deliver that consistent display over, like, an inter-county hurling game is 80 minutes now, realistically, between injury time in the first half, injury time in the second half, and to be literally on point and at your best and as close to flawless as possible from minute 1 to minute 80. And, like, I don't recall, I've looked back at it since, I don't really remember making a mistake. People would have said that, his tackling maybe was a bit borderline at different stages. He didn't give away a free in the All-Ireland final. He scored 1-5. He set up loads of other attacks. He grafted. He worked. He was as much of a defender as an attacker throughout the game. And the thing, as I said as well, when the need was greatest for one of their marquee men to step up, he definitely stepped up.
You mentioned the physicality and the strength of Hegarty as well there, Mick, and I think it's Carver O'Callaghan came on board with John Kiley as strength and conditioning coach the end of last year, I think it was. Like, when you look at Gearóid Hegarty's physique, he's a walking, talking billboard for the increased emphasis, I guess, on strength and conditioning in the game as well in recent years.
Oh, big time, yeah, and it's probably a change in physique as well. Bulk would have been seen as being very important, maybe, even if you look at the Armagh footballers from 2002, all big lads, big kind of musty fellas, whereas the physique of hurlers and footballers has probably changed a good bit there. You need to be probably a bit leaner. You don't need to be carrying that bulk as much because you need to be getting around the pitch. So it's a kind of a happy marriage between being able to get around the pitch and having that athleticism, but also having the power to be able to break a tackle, to be able to deliver a hit. So Hegarty, to me, is probably the prototype of a guy like that. And yeah, just to imagine to say he's delivered 3-14 from play in 3 All-Ireland finals and capped with that 1-5 only a couple of months ago. And just to see it, and just to see a lad who was so on point, so on his game. And I remember Cian Lynch saying after I was chatting to him the next morning, he just said, I was looking at Gearóid in the warm-up and he just looked so loose. And he was going around doing flicks and doing things like you do out in the garden, and that's just such a good sign. That's such a good sign of a player just enjoying it, just reveling in the occasion. And he certainly did. I'm interested to hear, I know you said there at the start, some interesting omissions, so I'm interested to hear what the omissions are.
My big one, I was expecting, when I came in this morning, I was expecting the Crucible or one of the
1 to 5 snooker was what I was thinking.
I was looking for five World Snooker Championship matches at the Crucible, but no, I'm only slightly disappointed that you didn't include the Crucible.
No, WWE.
But I know it's still, no WWE as well, so a couple of slightly surprising omissions.
Burr matches, it's
Unfortunately, I've been at the Crucible 3 or 4 times, but I've not been at a big world final or a big black ball finish or anything like that. Unfortunately, hopefully in time with the WWE, I have some great memories. If we're talking about best I've seen, yes, I'll put loads of them. Hulk Hogan against The Rock at WrestleMania 18, which Will O'Callaghan was actually at, which I'm sure he will have in his. You had to be there whenever that comes up, but I suppose it's different when you're thinking of what you've actually been at and what you've actually experienced. So they're my 5. Probably Shane O'Donnell in 2013, the All-Ireland final replay would probably been a close one as well. Just to see a guy coming in at 19 years of age and doing something like that totally from left field was unbelievable as well.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have to Google photographs of Mick Verney and Hulk Hogan, and I fully expect to find some results given the nature of the conversation over the last half an hour thereabouts. Good man, you've been a gent. Thanks a million.
Thanks a million, folks. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Mick Verney there.
It was so unexpected.
You had to be there.
Covering Celtic at that time was a brilliant thing. The atmosphere at Parkhead was always great.
You had to be there.
Nobody ever talks about this game. Nobody saw it.
You had to be there.
Right, it's 20 to 10. That is almost it for today. Good man, Shane. Well done.
Cheers, Adrian.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
fair play. Brought to you live each morning, of course, by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're back tomorrow morning. Kathleen and myself are going to be reunited in studio by Kieran Donaghy, so you want to tune in for that. We're going to have some rugby conversation with Alan Quinlan. We're going to also speak with the iconic ex-Arsenal women's manager Vic Ackers and much more as well besides. So that is it from us for the minute, but we're going to leave you with a piece of Dr. Mickey Collins. He was in with Joe last night and talking about the dangers of concussion in sport. Enjoy. See you tomorrow.
Now then, you're very welcome back to studio. So, Concussion in Sport, a national conversation. It's a seminar. It's taking place this Saturday, September 24th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at UCD Belfield. It's an event that will feature some of the world's foremost authorities on concussion in sport, including our next guest who is here in studio. I was going to call you Dr. Michael Collins, but Mickey is the preferred choice. You're very welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you.
You're welcome to Ireland. So, as I understand it, you're involved, University of Pittsburgh's Medical Centre. They have a sports medicine concussion programme, and you were the clinical and executive director of said programme.
Correct.
Great. Listen, it's super to have you with us, because as you can imagine, we talk about concussion in sport quite a lot and have done over the last number of years. Right. So to get the ball rolling, it's my understanding from reading various interviews you've given that you're very much of the persuasion that concussion is something that is very treatable, and there are great advances in treatment, and that extends far beyond go and rest in a quiet, dark room.
Yes, concussion is a treatable condition. We've made a lot of advances in terms of, we now know there's different types of concussions, and we know that active treatments, specific treatments, treat those specific types of problems that we see with the injury. And we do. There's no dark rooms in our clinic. It's about rehabbing, retraining, rehabituating the systems that are decompensated from the injury. And we're coming up with very effective physical therapies, exercise programs, and it's all about retraining the brain, not resting the brain.
What's an example of an exercise or a therapy that someone might undergo?
I don't want to get too technical, but there's one of the types of concussions is a problem to a system in the brain called the vestibular system. And concussion is this energy crisis to the cells and neurons that occurs. And when that energy problem happens, that's one of the systems that can decompensate. And that system allows us to basically interpret motion. It allows us to stabilize our vision. We move our head. It allows us to be in car rides, in grocery stores. It allows us to move dynamically and exercise. And there's a part of the brain that interprets all that. And with concussion, that system will literally decompensate, and patients will feel this like slow, wavy, dizzy, foggy, tired, headache, nausea. It's a very unpleasant thing to feel. And that system in the brain is also connected to the nervous system, so patients will get a lot of anxiety with it. And then they'll try to avoid certain environments. They don't want to exercise specifically. They don't want to be social because it pulls on that system and causes a lot of disruption. The way we treat that problem is by training it. And we can actually identify where that system's breaking down and then create an exercise program to rehab and retrain the brain. We actually have physical therapy exercises that have been developed to retrain that system. And once we retrain that system, for example, the anxiety gets better, the symptoms get better, and the brain recovers, and we can get kids back to the sports they love.
And are these therapies quite new? Would they be employed widespread across medicine? Where are we on that front?
They've been around for a long time, but we've really adapted them for this problem. And yes, a lot of the therapies and techniques that we're doing in Pittsburgh, or we're coming to Ireland and training clinicians here, some of those rehab principles, and really better understanding how to diagnose the injury and how to assess it, and understanding the different types. There's different treatments for these different problems. It's not just a vestibular problem. There's other types as well. And we're coming over here, and first of all, we've created what's called the UPMC Concussion Network, where we've trained clinicians. We have 8 clinicians or so across the country. They've all come to Pittsburgh and trained with us. And we have like case conferences over the phone and grand rounds and those sorts of things where we really stay in close touch with these clinicians, and those clinicians are seeing patients here in Ireland, and it's been very successful, and it's really growing, and we're getting really good care to our Irish athletes and others. This is not a sports only injury. Car accidents, slip and falls, There's 1.8 to 3.6 million concussions occurring per year in the United States in sports and recreation alone per year. This is a very common, prevalent injury, and it's happening here in Ireland, obviously.
Yes.
But the advances are such that we can treat it effectively and get kids back to the sports they love the great majority of the time.
And so, Mickey, is your daily life, your daily working life, seeing lots of patients who've suffered a concussion for all various types of reasons? That's your Monday to Friday.
We see about 20,000 cases a year in Pittsburgh, and myself, I'm very busy. I'm in clinic 5 days a week. We also do a lot of research. I used to be 6'3" and buff, and I've shrunk a few inches, I think. But very busy. It's a very busy program, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's exciting work, though.
Okay. Well, we might just go down the route of sport for a few moments then. So, like a point from the off, and I think instinctively we might sense this from watching different players suffer with concussion and others not. Different people are more susceptible than others. Different genders more susceptible than others.
Correct. Yeah. Smart. Yeah. So we've now identified this very specific risk factors that predict patients who are going to have a harder time recovering from concussion. They take longer. Patients with a history of motion sickness are more vulnerable to concussion because of the vestibular system. Concussion fights dirty. Like if you have a history of motion sickness and that energy problem happens in the brain, it's going to affect that system more in a patient with a history of motion sickness than patients that don't. Right. Okay. Patients with a history of lazy eye or strabismus, amblyopia, that is a risk factor for oculomotor concerns. Patients with a history of migraine are more likely to have migraine after concussion. Patients with a history of anxiety, that's a big risk factor, actually, and that predicts anxiety following concussion. A lot of mood changes that we can see. Patients with a history of learning disability are more likely to have cognitive issues following concussion. And so it takes less force to cause injury in those patients. And once it happens, we know they go down these certain pathways, and that's why there's different types of injuries, and that's why we have to apply different types of treatments. One thing that's very interesting is that girls are more susceptible to this than boys. The reason why is girls are 6 times more likely to have migraine than boys. Girls have more motion sickness proclivity than boys. Girls have weaker necks than boys. That predicts it takes less force for this injury to happen. Thank you. With girls, and the outcomes can be a little longer when you have those conditions on board.
Is there a standard time frame as to how long it takes somebody to get over a quote-unquote standard concussion? I appreciate there are different types.
There are different types, and it's highly variable. But the average recovery time, if you look at all the literature that we've published and others, for an adolescent athlete is about 30 days. Now, don't go home and say, oh, sit out 30 days and we'll go back to play. Some kids get better in 5 days. Some kids take 3 months to recover. There's a lot of variability.
And how do you know if somebody's better?
We have very sophisticated tools to assess the injury and quantify it and actually measure it. So there's very good tools that we've developed. Neurocognitive testing, computerized neurocognitive testing. It's a test on a computer called Impact that we've developed that helps to measure this injury. We've created a physical exam called the VOMS, which stands for Vestibular Oculomotor Screening. That's a tool that we've developed. We know what questions to ask. We know what exam to do. We know how to look at this exertionally. So we have a standardized test we run on patients when we clear them. We work them out in certain ways to make sure there's no lingering problems.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of advances, and probably a lot. Most of the listenership here probably isn't aware of those things.
So take, and we might just pick different case studies or examples, and you can explain maybe what's going on. Take the athlete, the rugby player, and rugby comes to mind at the moment because there's been a big conversation there. But I mean, I'm going to ask you about boxing in a moment as well, you know. Yeah. But take the rugby player who's retired and maybe remembers a concussion from 10 years ago and maybe thinks, well, did I have subconcussive blows a lot or small dings? And they're finding themselves with mood swings or anxiety or some of those symptoms. Right. Are they treatable, or is that more in the realm of that's somebody who's got CTE or maybe early onset dementia? Are they, where are they on the spectrum?
I can tell you that we do a lot of work with patients that have chronic problems from this injury, and a lot of these patients can be treated effectively. And there are treatments for those types of patients available. And we do see a lot of chronic anxiety in patients that go through concussion. There's a lot of biology behind that. But there's also other life factors, when patients become anxious, they'll become more reclusive, they'll become less social, they may exercise less, they may take naps, they may dysregulate their sleep. They sort of retract, and that worsens the anxiety.
Yes.
And we're very good at teaching patients behaviorally how to approach life in a far different manner to avoid that. Our recommendations, no naps, very strict sleep schedule. We want exercise. If there is a vestibular problem, we can rehab that, and the vestibular system is connected to the nervous system. So once you rehab the vestibular system, the anxiety goes down. And patients with anxiety have chronic migraine. We can treat that by treating the anxiety. There's very good treatments for anxiety. There's psychotherapy, there's even medications if needed. And a lot of patients that think they're having problems from concussion are really having chronic problems of that. And what's scary to me is there's a lot of misinformation out there about concussion, and a lot of folks think that there is this inevitable decline they're going to experience, and it produces massive amounts of anxiety. When the reality is that a lot of those patients are fully treatable.
Yes, and CTE falls under the bracket of what I've described as being treatable as well. That's not some degenerative, we can't do much about this.
That's an area that needs more science. We don't know. We know that there's pathology in the brains of some individuals with what's called tauopathy, so build up a tau protein in the brain. What we don't know scientifically is whether concussion or head trauma in and of itself causes that tauopathy. Okay. We don't know if other factors play a role in that. We don't know if concussion even plays a single role with that. We don't know if it's a normal neurodegenerative process. There's been patients found that have not played sports that have those problems.
Right.
There's a very sort of nascent beginning literature looking at that topic, and I can tell you there's a lot of science that call into question some of those findings. There's a lot of science that support those findings, and science takes time, and we're doing a research project now, a very advanced research project looking at former NFL players, a very large cohort of patients that played in the NFL, and we're comparing them to match controls that didn't, and we're doing incredibly sophisticated measurements of neurohealth. We're looking at imaging, we're looking at blood work, we're looking at neurocognitive functioning, mood, and we're going to have results seeing what the true prevalence of neurodegeneration is in that population. Yeah. And the jury's out on it because that research hasn't been done.
And is there agreement, and again, these questions are too simplistic, I know, but is there any kind of a broad agreement on, say, take the sports person who had 1 or 2 or 3 severe concussions across their 15-year career versus the sports person who doesn't really remember being badly concussed but took a lot of bangs to the head and, thousands potentially. Who's likely to have the more adverse outcome? Let's say they're both as susceptible as each other in the first place. Do we know which is worse for a sports person?
We don't. Okay. I can tell you if there's an injury and it's recognized and evaluated and treated, we know that's the most powerful thing to prevent problems from happening. You're going to return to normal vulnerability. It's about receiving proper treatment from the injury.
Well, that was one of the key questions. So, athlete who suffers in the short term is treated well in accordance with, say, the therapies you're talking about.
Yes.
They're now no more vulnerable to CTE or early onset dementia in future years if it's treated well in the short term.
I believe that we have to bridge that.
Okay.
Again, there's not really good research, bridging that issue to that issue.
Because I guess those treatments haven't been in existence long enough, is it?
Correct.
Yeah.
We need prospective long-term longitudinal studies on that. And so there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. But what I can tell you is the patients that we treat, they get better and they get normal. And it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't resonate with me that the patients that end up doing really well with treatments would all of a sudden go down this pathway in a negative way. I really do believe if this injury is managed properly, concussion's a treatable injury, because we see that, we've proven that through our research. We know that patients become asymptomatic. We know the therapies work. We know how to treat this injury. And I'm all about kids getting back to the sports they love. If they meet my criteria for recovery, I'm 100% going to recommend these kids go back to play. And sports offer an incredible opportunity for kids competitively, socially, exercise-wise. Imagine a world without that, right?
Yes,
and
for sure.
So I'm very much in favor. Nothing about that long-term stuff has changed my treatment and getting kids back to play.
Okay.
Because the science hasn't evolved to the point where we fully understand that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's moving all the time. There's probably a current generation, for instance, of rugby players looking at the generation before them in their early 40s now who are being diagnosed with early onset dementia, which is devastating on so many fronts. What conspires to result in early onset dementia for those sports people who do put it down to their sport and the bangs to the head and the concussion?
We don't necessarily fully know if the sports are the only cause of that. There's many causes for neurodegenerative disease, and the base population has decent rates of that as well. There's a lot to learn here, and that makes people uncomfortable, and I understand that completely. And science takes time, but I can tell you in the next 2 to 5 years, it's not only our group, but there are many other groups across the country in the United States and even here that are doing really good research. We're going to have a lot of answers in the near future, or better answers. But it's always going to be an evolution. That's what makes, science takes time, and those projects are underway, and get me back here in a couple of years and I'll have a little more clarification on it.
Okay, deal. The significance of a concussive episode and then continuing on the field of play.
Yeah.
That's obviously a hot topic. So what do we know about concussive episode and continuing to play?
Yeah, well, we got some good research on that one. So if patients, we just did this study, it was published in JAMA Neurology, where we looked at a very large cohort of athletes, and half the sample came out of play immediately at the time they had symptoms of concussion, and half the sample played for 15 minutes beyond the point of having symptoms. The sample that came out immediately recovered in 19 days. The sample that continued to play for just 15 minutes recovered in 44 days. So just playing 15 minutes beyond the point of having symptoms resulted in them missing nearly a month longer of play. And we've also done this it's a dose response. So for every minute you play, it increases your time of recovery beyond the point of. So the point I'm making is that, when in doubt, sit them out. But the symptoms of concussion can be very subtle. For example, and a lot of people don't know this, but we've done some research looking at, let me ask you the question, what symptom on field do you think best predicts worse outcome from concussion? The one symptom that predicts worse outcome more than any other symptom?
I'd be wavering between loss of consciousness or